Have you ever seen a truck shaped like a giant hot dog speeding down the highway? Or a military beast so thirsty it consumes fuel faster than you can pour it? Welcome to the wild side of automotive history. Today we are not looking at your average pickup trucks like the Ford F-150. We are diving into the strange, the legendary, and the absolutely bizarre. From the frozen wastelands of the Soviet Union to the sunny streets of America, we have hunted down 10 classic trucks that defy explanation. Some were built to save nations, while others were just crazy experiments gone wrong. Buckle up, because you won't believe these machines actually exist. We begin our journey with a true war hero, a machine that proves engineering knows no borders, the Studebaker US6. While the name sounds as American as apple pie, this truck became an absolute legend on the other side of the world, in the Soviet Union. Produced between 1941 and 1945 by the Studebaker Corporation in Indiana, this 6x6 behemoth was designed to conquer the toughest terrains imaginable. While the U.S. Army preferred other trucks, the US6 became the backbone of the Red Army during World War II, proving that sometimes a product finds its true home far away from where it was born. What made the US6 so special was its rugged simplicity. It was powered by the Hercules JXD six-cylinder gasoline engine, producing roughly 95 horsepower. That might not sound like much today, but combined with its robust transmission and a payload capacity of 5,000 pounds off-road, it was unstoppable. The Soviets loved it because, unlike their domestic trucks at the time, the Studebaker was reliable and could handle the brutal Russian winter without freezing up. It featured a distinctively tough design with metal grills and a high stance, allowing it to wade through deep mud and snow that would trap lesser vehicles. However, the most iconic role of this truck was serving as the primary platform for the terrifying Katyusha rocket launchers. When you see historical footage of rockets firing into the German lines, creating a deafening noise that terrified enemy troops, they are likely launching from the back of an American Studebaker. Over 200,000 of these were sent to the USSR under the Lend-Lease program. It is a strange twist of history that an American truck became the symbol of Soviet military might. The US-6 was tough, simple, and rugged, a perfect start to our list of legends. If the Studebaker was the hero of the war, the Ural 375D was the monster of the Cold War. Entering production in 1961, this Soviet general-purpose truck was designed with one goal: to go where no roads existed. The Ural 375D is a 6x6 off-road beast that looks like it could smash through a brick wall without a scratch. With a curb weight of over 18,000 pounds, it is a massive piece of iron. Its aggressive, boxy nose and high ground clearance make it instantly recognizable as a symbol of Soviet heavy industry and military might. The heart of this giant is a massive 7.0-liter V8 gasoline engine, the ZIL 375, and this is where things get crazy. This engine was derived from a luxury limousine design, meaning it required high-octane fuel, a rarity in the military. But its biggest problem is its legendary thirst. This truck is one of the least fuel-efficient vehicles ever made. In rough terrain, consumption could reach nearly 2.5 miles per gallon. That means for every 100 miles you drive, you burn through roughly 40 gallons of fuel. It is an environmental nightmare, but a mechanical marvel of raw power. Despite its drinking problem, the Ural 375D was an off-road genius. It featured a central tire inflation system, allowing the driver to adjust tire pressure from inside the cabin to float over sand, swamp, or deep snow. It was used for everything from transporting troops to carrying the BM-21 Grad multiple rocket launcher system. The distinctive roar of its V8 engine could be heard from miles away. While it has largely been replaced by diesel versions today, the original gasoline-powered Ural remains a legend for its ability to traverse terrain that would stop a modern tank. Leaving the Soviet giants behind, we travel to East Germany to meet a true icon of the socialist era, the IFA W50. Built in the city of Ludwigsfelde, this truck wasn't just a vehicle, it was the backbone of an entire nation's economy. The W stands for Werdau, where it was designed, and 50 represents its payload capacity of 5 metric tons or about 11,000 pounds. Production started in 1965 and ran for an incredible 25 years. If you lived in the Eastern Bloc between the 60s and the 80s, you saw this truck every single day. The IFA W50 was powered by a 6.56-liter four-cylinder diesel engine. It wasn't built for speed, topping out at around 50 miles per hour, but it was built to last forever. Its design is instantly recognizable with its cab-over-engine layout and a friendly wide grille that gives it a distinct face. The engineering was focused on simplicity. You could practically repair it with a hammer and a basic wrench, which made it incredibly popular in developing countries. It was a massive export success, sold to nations across Africa, the Middle East, and Asia, including Vietnam. What truly made the W50 special was its versatility. It had over 60 different variants straight from the factory. It served as a dump truck, a fire engine, a military troop carrier, a crane, and even a furniture van with an extended cabin. Some versions were equipped with balloon tires for agriculture, while others had all-wheel drive for military use. While it lacked the comfort and electronics of Western trucks, the IFA W50 represents pure utilitarian engineering at its finest. It was a truck that built nations, one load at a time. Welcome to Hungary. In the 1960s, the Hungarian People's Army needed a new off-road truck, and the Csepel Works delivered the D344. At first glance, it looks like a standard vintage military truck, perhaps a bit charming with its rounded hood. But if you look underneath the chassis, you will find a drivetrain layout that is completely unique in the world of trucks. Most 4x4 trucks use a central drive shaft to send power to a differential in the middle of the front axle. But Csepel engineers had a different idea. To keep the truck's profile low and stable, the engineers couldn't put a bulky differential directly under the engine. Their solution was a complex transfer case that sent power to the front wheels via two separate propeller shafts, one for the left wheel and one for the right. This intricate mechanical ballet allowed the engine to sit lower, giving the truck a much lower center of gravity than its competitors. It was powered by a 5.5-liter four-cylinder diesel engine producing roughly 100 horsepower. It wasn't a powerhouse, but it was smart. Despite its modest power and a top speed of only about 50 miles per hour, the D344 was surprisingly agile on mountain roads thanks to its clever weight distribution. It served faithfully for decades, towing artillery and carrying supplies across difficult terrain. While the dual-shaft system was complicated to maintain, it proved that Hungarian engineers were willing to think outside the box. Today, collectors love it for its quirks and that distinct, almost retro-futuristic rounded cabin. It is a prime example of how different nations solve the same problems in completely different ways. Czechoslovakia has a rich history of mechanical engineering, and one of their most famous creations is the Praga V3S, a legendary military off-roader. But what happens when you need a truck for regular roads? You get the Praga S5T. The S stands for Silničný, which means road in Czech, and 5T stands for its 5-ton capacity. Launched in the late 1950s, the S5T was essentially the civilized brother of the military V3S. It took the rugged bones of a war machine and adapted them for hauling coal, milk, and groceries. The most distinctive feature of the S5T is its engine. It used an air-cooled Tatra diesel engine. Yes, air-cooled. This meant there was no radiator to leak, no water pump to fail, and no coolant to freeze in the harsh winters. The engine sound is unmistakable, a loud clattering roar that you can hear from miles away. While the military version had a flat face, the S5T featured a long protruding nose to house the engine giving it better aerodynamics and a unique, almost anteater-like profile that stands out on the road. Inside, the cabin was more comfortable than the military version, although comfortable is a relative term for a truck from the 60s. The S5T was lowered for better stability on asphalt and geared for higher speeds, reaching about 45 miles per hour. It was the workhorse of Czechoslovakia for decades. While it might look strange to modernize, the S5T was a triumph of practical engineering. It's rugged, loud, and undeniably charismatic, a truck that refuses to die and still has a cult following among classic vehicle enthusiasts today. When you think of American heavy trucks, names like Mack or Peterbilt usually come to mind. But true connoisseurs know the legend of Brockway. Founded in Cortland, New York, Brockway started as a carriage builder in the 1800s before moving into trucks. The Model 761 is a prime example of their philosophy, rugged luxury. Why is it on this list? Because of its mascot. Every Brockway truck proudly displays a husky dog on the radiator grille. They were marketed as the most rugged truck in the world, and the husky symbolized stamina and strength. The 761 series, popular in the 60s and 70s, wasn't mass-produced on a generic assembly line like a Ford. These were often custom-built to the buyer's exact specifications. They were famous for their heavy-duty construction, using real steel fenders instead of fiberglass or plastic. Power came from massive diesel engines, often Cummins or Caterpillar, allowing these trucks to haul massive loads of timber or construction materials. Driving a Brockway 761 was a physical experience. No power steering in the early days, just a raw mechanical connection between the driver and the road. Sadly, the company closed its doors in 1977, making these trucks rare collectibles today. The Brockway 761 represents a bygone era of American manufacturing where quality and customization were more important than volume. Seeing a husky on the road today is a special treat for truck lovers. It stands as a monument to the golden age of trucking, a time when trucks had distinct personalities and were built to outlive their owners. But if a massive American semi is too big for you, how about a truck that is technically a motorcycle? We are now entering the weird and tiny section of our list, and we start in Italy with the Machi MB1. You might know the name Machi from their famous World War II fighter planes or Airmachi motorcycles. After the war, Italy needed cheap, efficient transportation to rebuild the country, and Machi had a brilliant idea: combine a motorcycle with a truck. The MB1, introduced in the 1950s, is a three-wheeled diesel truck. Yes, 3 wheels. It looks like the front of a motorcycle was welded to the back of a cargo box. But don't let the size fool you. This was a serious machine. It featured a fully closed cabin for the driver, which was pure luxury compared to riding a scooter in the rain. It was powered by a robust 750cc diesel engine, providing enough torque to carry heavy loads of stone, wood, or produce. The design is incredibly utilitarian. The single front wheel allowed for a tight turning radius, perfect for navigating the narrow, ancient streets of Italian cities where a standard 4-wheel truck would get stuck. The Machi MB1 represents a specific moment in history where efficiency was more important than speed or comfort. Top speed was barely 40 miles per hour, and the ride was bumpy, but it got the job done. It chugged along with that classic diesel thumping sound, helping to build modern Italy. It is strange, it can be unstable at high speeds if you aren't careful, but it is undeniably cool. But if you think 3 wheels are weird, wait until you see a truck made of canvas. This might be the most adorable truck ever made. Meet the Solito. Produced in France by New Map starting in the 1950s, this vehicle stretches the definition of the word truck. It was designed as a sans-permis vehicle, meaning it had an engine so small that you didn't even need a driver's license to operate it in France. The Solito is basically a sheet metal box on 3 tiny wheels, weighing only about 300 pounds. It is so small you could almost park it in your living room. But the craziest part: to save weight and money, on earlier models like the TC, the doors and sides were often made of canvas. It is essentially a tent on wheels. Power came from a tiny two-stroke engine, often around 125 cc, similar to what you would find in a small scooter. With less than 5 horsepower, the top speed was a terrifying 30 miles per hour, if you were brave enough to push it that far. It offers 0 crash protection, 0 speed, and 0 luxury, but it oozes character. It was marketed to small business owners, bakers, milkmen, and florists who needed to move goods short distances around the village. Driving one feels like you are sitting in a vintage toy. The engine buzzes right next to you, and you can feel every pebble on the road. It serves as a reminder of a time when regulations were loose, and innovation meant making things as simple as humanly possible. From a French tent truck, let's go to Japan for a truck that has the cutest face in automotive history. In the world of Japanese K-trucks, tiny vehicles regulated by government size limits, the Mazda Porter Cab stands out as the undisputed king of cuteness. Specifically, we are talking about the facelifted version introduced in 1977. While the original model was charming, the 77 update gave it a look that looks like it came straight out of an anime. The most distinctive feature is its face. It has 2 large round headlights surrounded by thick cream-colored plastic bezels that look like glasses or the eyes of a panda. Between those eyes is a small vent that looks like a nose. It literally looks like the truck is smiling at you. Beneath the cabin sits a small 550cc 2-cylinder engine, upgraded from the earlier versions to meet new regulations. It produces about 29 horsepower, which is just enough to carry its 1,300-pound payload through tight city streets. The engine sound is unique, a high-pitched buzz that sounds more like a lawnmower than a truck, adding to its toy-like appeal. It's tiny, efficient, and impossible to ignore. Despite its adorable appearance, the Porter Cab was a tough worker. It helped rebuild and sustain Japan's economy, navigating the tightest alleyways of Tokyo and Osaka where larger trucks couldn't fit. Today, they are cult classics around the world. People modify them, lower them, or just restore them to keep that happy face on the road. It is impossible to be angry when you see a 1977 Mazda Porter Cab. But for our final truck, we have something that isn't just cute, it is a global celebrity. We have saved the best for last. This is not just a truck, it is a marketing masterpiece, the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile. The idea was born in 1936 when Karl Mayer, the nephew of the company's founder, suggested building a vehicle shaped like a giant hot dog to promote their sausages. The concept was crazy, but it worked. While there have been many versions over the decades built on Dodge, Chevy, and GMC chassis, the core design remains the same, a 27-foot-long fiberglass hot dog resting on a yellow bun. This vehicle defies all logic. It is aerodynamic nonsense, visually loud, and serves no practical purpose other than to make people smile and hungry. The driver is officially called a hot dogger, and their job is to drive across America spreading joy and handing out wiener whistles. Underneath the bun, modern versions are typically powered by a powerful V8 engine, similar to a delivery van, allowing it to keep up with highway traffic at 65 miles per hour. It's a surreal sight to see a giant hot dog overtaking you on the freeway. The Wienermobile proves that sometimes the weirdest ideas are the most brilliant. It has survived for nearly a century, outliving almost every other car brand from the 1930s. Seeing one in real life is considered a sign of good luck by many. It is the ultimate combination of automotive engineering and pure American advertising genius. It is not just a vehicle, it is an icon of pop culture that brings out the inner child in everyone who sees it. These 10 mechanical marvels prove that automotive history is full of surprises, not just boring horsepower figures. From the frozen battlefields of the East to the sunny highways of the West, human creativity truly knows no bounds. I'm curious, if you had to pick one truck to survive a zombie apocalypse, which one would it be? The armored Ural or the speedy Wienermobile? Let us know below. If you enjoyed this wild ride, please smash that like button and subscribe for more amazing stories. Thanks for... Forget everything you think you know about trucks. Modern rigs are just boring plastic boxes compared to the mechanical monsters we've dug up today. We are talking about 500-ton leviathans that shatter pavement, engines that sound like machine guns, and a logging beast so massive it needs water-cooled brakes just to keep from bursting into flames. From a bizarre Mickey Mouse oddity to a Guinness World Record holder that defies physics, these are the 10 strangest vintage trucks that actually existed. You won't believe the engineering freak at number 1. It is absolutely terrifying. So smash that subscribe button, buckle up, and watch until the very last second because this heavy-duty history lesson is about to get wild. Let's ease into this list with something that isn't just strange, it is absolutely stunning. Meet the Diamond T201, often hailed as the Cadillac of trucks. Produced in the United States starting in the late 1930s and running through the 40s, the Diamond T wasn't built for brute force alone, it was built for style. In an era where trucks were strictly utilitarian workhorses, rough, loud, and uncomfortable, the Chicago-based Diamond T Company decided that truck drivers deserved a little bit of luxury. It features a stainless steel grille that looks like it belongs on a high-end luxury sedan, not a pickup. What made the Model 201 so bizarre for its time was its heavy borrowing from passenger car design. The fenders were sweeping and elegant, the cab was lower and more streamlined, and the interior featured passenger car gauges and comfort levels that were unheard of in commercial haulage. Under that stylish hood lay a Hercules 6-cylinder engine that was virtually indestructible, capable of hauling a payload of roughly 2,000 pounds. While 2,000 pounds might seem modest by today's heavy-duty standards, back then doing it at highway speeds of 50 miles per hour in such comfort was a revolutionary concept. The Diamond T201 is a testament to a time when industrial design was considered an art form. It is weird because it prioritized beauty in a market segment that usually didn't care about looks at all. It was a one-tonner that blurred the lines between a heavy-duty worker and a Sunday cruiser. Today, finding a 201 in original condition is like finding a needle in a haystack, and collectors in the US will pay a small fortune for the privilege of owning the most stylish truck ever built. It remains a rolling sculpture that proves work trucks don't have to be ugly. From American elegance, we jump across the pond to British quirkiness with the Foden S20. If you look at the cab of this truck, you might notice a resemblance to a certain famous cartoon character. Yes, this is affectionately known in the trucking world as the Mickey Mouse cab. Introduced in the 1950s by Foden, one of Britain's oldest truck manufacturers, the S20 has one of the most distinct faces in history. This is primarily due to the split windshield and the large rounded panels that distinctly mimic a smiling face, giving it a personality that most steel machines lack. The weirdness here isn't just cosmetic, it was a pioneering use of materials. The S20's cab was a composite construction, utilizing fiberglass reinforcing. At the time, this was space-age stuff, helping to shave off hundreds of pounds of deadweight compared to traditional steel cabs. Under the skin, the Foden S20 was a beast, often featuring the legendary Foden two-stroke diesel engine. These engines had a screaming, high-pitched exhaust note that you could hear from miles away. It wasn't fast by modern standards, topping out around 40 miles per hour, but its torque was sufficient to haul heavy loads across the UK's narrow roads. The S20 was a favorite among British haulers for its reliability and that iconic look. Foden took a massive risk with composite materials to prevent the rust that plagued metal cabs in the damp British weather, and it paid off. The shape was distinct, sure, but it was also surprisingly aerodynamic for the 1950s. It's a truck that proves you can be serious about heavy hauling while looking a little bit ridiculous. It's charming, it's bizarre, and it remains a true icon of the UK highways that collectors strive to preserve to this day. Staying in Britain, we move to a rival of Foden, ERF. In the 1950s, they released the KV series, and instantly it grabbed attention for one very specific design feature. The KV actually stood for Clear View, spelled with a K, and the reason is staring you right in the face. While other trucks had split screens or tiny flat glass, the ERF-KV boasted a panoramic curved glass windshield with rounded corners. This design offered visibility previously unknown to truck drivers, eliminating dangerous blind spots that were common in older, boxier designs. Mechanically, the ERF-KV was usually powered by the Gardner diesel engine, typically producing around 150 horsepower. If you know anything about vintage engines, you know that Gardner engines are slow-revving, incredibly fuel-efficient, and essentially immortal. The combination of the futuristic clear-view cab and the bulletproof Gardner powertrain made the ERF-KV a legend. It could handle gross vehicle weights of over 30,000 pounds with ease. The styling is almost Art Deco, with the radiator grille integrating smoothly into the flowing lines of the front panel, looking more like a locomotive than a truck. The cab itself was beautifully rounded, moving away from the flat-nosed designs of the pre-war era. The KV was designed to maximize the driver's ability to navigate tight roads and loading docks, making it a favorite for drivers who spend days on the road. It's a strange mix of forward-thinking aesthetics and conservative, reliable engineering that creates a truly unique vintage machine. Even today, at vintage truck rallies, the fishbowl visibility of the ERF-KV stands out, reminding us of a time when visibility was the newest luxury feature. Let's head north to Scotland to talk about the Albion River. The Albion motto was, "Sure as the sunrise," and looking at the River, you can see why. While it might look like a standard vintage lorry to the untrained eye, the River was a technological oddity in the 1950s and 60s because of its chassis configuration. The cab design, known as the LAD cab, Leyland Albion Dodge, offered great visibility but was notoriously cramped and hot, sitting right on top of the engine. Despite the discomfort, it had a rugged charm that defined the Scottish working class. This was a lightweight six-wheeler with a double drive, meaning both rear axles were powered in a 6x4 configuration. At the time, most six-wheelers were heavy, lumbering giants weighing tens of thousands of pounds. Albion managed to engineer the River to be lightweight enough to carry a massive payload legally, yet tough enough to handle off-road construction sites. With a gross vehicle weight of around 40,000 pounds, it punched way above its weight class. The weird factor comes from its non-reactive suspension system and the sheer compactness of the drivetrain. The Albion River became the darling of the construction and tipper industry across the UK. It could scramble out of muddy quarries where heavier, more powerful trucks would sink and get stuck. Its distinct engine note and the whining sound of its transmission are nostalgic triggers for anyone who grew up in the UK during that era. It wasn't the biggest, but its unique lightweight 6x4 design makes it a marvel of efficiency. It proved that in the world of trucking, being lighter and smarter is sometimes better than just being bigger. Next up is the Knight of the Road, the Atkinson Borderer. Atkinson vehicles, based in Preston, England, had a very specific way of doing things. The Borderer, particularly the Mark I and Mark X models, is instantly recognizable by the big A inside a circle right in the center of the radiator grille. But the real oddity here is, once again, the construction material. Atkinson was a pioneer in using glass-reinforced plastic, fiberglass, for their cabs long before it became industry standard. It looks tough, almost aggressive, with its flat front and exposed radiator. That exposed radiator was often just a facade. Behind the grille was usually a Gardner engine that ran so cool it barely needed the airflow. The quirkiness of the Atkinson lies in its customization. Unlike mass-produced trucks, Atkinsons were often hand-built to specific customer orders. You could order a Borderer with almost any combination of engine and gearbox you wanted. Most were set up for a gross combination weight of roughly 70,000 pounds, a standard for British haulage at the time. The driving experience was raw, with no power steering and a clutch that required a strong left leg. The environment inside the fiberglass cab was notoriously loud, and the heating was practically non-existent, often leading drivers to wear heavy coats while driving in winter. Yet drivers loved them. There was a pride in driving an Atkinson Black Knight or Borderer. It represented a rugged individualism that is lost in today's standardized fleet trucks. It's a fiberglass box of noise and power, and that is why we love it. The Borderer remains a symbol of the golden age of British haulage, where the driver had to really drive the machine. Let's cross the Alps into Italy. Italian trucks are often overlooked, but the OM Super Orione is a machine that demands respect. Produced in the 1950s by OM, Officine Meccaniche, this truck was a heavy-duty monster designed to conquer the steep winding passes of the Italian mountains. The design of the truck is distinctly Italian. It has a mustache-style grille and a very tall, commanding stance. It looks like a brute in a tailored suit, combining rugged utility with a touch of Mediterranean flair that makes it stand out from its German and British counterparts. What makes the Super Orione strange and special is what powered it. In an era where most European trucks were running inline-six engines, the Super Orione boasted a massive 90-degree V8 diesel engine. A V8 in a commercial truck in the 1950s was a serious statement. It produced around 170 horsepower. While that sounds low today, back then it was the king of the road. This power allowed it to tow loads exceeding 40 tons up steep gradients where other trucks would stall. The sound of that V8 echoing off the tunnel walls in the Alps was absolutely legendary. The Super Orione was famous for pulling road trains in Italy, a truck and a trailer with a combined weight that would crush lesser vehicles. It represents a golden age of Italian industrial might before strict regulations standardized truck sizes. The combination of that rare V8 configuration and the stylish, almost Art Deco front end makes the OM Super Orione a unicorn in the world of vintage trucking. It is sophisticated, powerful, and undeniably cool, proving that Italy's talent for engines extended far beyond Ferrari and Maserati. While we are in Italy, we have to talk about the king of Africa. This is the Fiat 682N2. If you go to certain parts of Africa today, you might still see these running. The 682 is bizarre not because of a weird shape, but because of its unkillable nature. Launched in the early 50s, this truck was so good, so simple, and so robust that it remained in production in various forms for over 3 decades. The N2 version is iconic, featuring the classic Baffy or mustache chrome whiskers on the front grille, giving it a friendly yet sturdy face. The real story is the chassis. The steel used in the Fiat 682 frames was of such high quality that they simply refused to snap. In many developing nations, these trucks were routinely overloaded by 200%, carrying loads of 50,000 to 60,000 pounds on trucks rated for half that amount. The engine was a slow-revving, high-torque masterpiece that could run on questionable quality fuel without complaining. It wasn't fast, struggling to hit 45 miles per hour, but speed wasn't the point. Reliability was the only metric that mattered, and the 682N2 scored a perfect 10. It's strange to think that a truck designed for paved Italian roads became the backbone of transport for an entire continent thousands of miles away. The 682N2 lacks modern comforts. No AC, power steering was a luxury, but its mechanical sympathy is unmatched. It is a legend that refuses to die. In the world of disposable technology, where cars break down after a few years, the Fiat 682N2 stands as a monument to permanent engineering. It is the vehicular equivalent of a hammer, simple, heavy, and it works every single time. Now prepare your ears. We are going to Germany to meet the Krupp Mustang. When you think of Krupp, you might think of steel manufacturing, but in the post-war era, they made some of the most distinct trucks on the Autobahn. Visually, the Mustang is imposing. It has a long alligator-style hood and a massive wide grille that screams authority. These trucks were instrumental in the Wirtschaftswunder, or the German economic miracle. But what truly makes the Mustang stand out isn't how it looks, but the terrifying and wonderful noise it makes. These trucks were powered by 2-stroke diesel engines producing upwards of 200 horsepower. Unlike the 4-stroke engines in almost every other truck, the Krupp 2-stroke fired twice as often, creating a distinct rapid-fire rat-a-tat-tat noise that sounded more like a machine gun than a transport vehicle. The engineering was complex and strange, using a scavenging blower to force air into the cylinders. This allowed the Mustang to haul loads of over 40,000 pounds at speeds nearing 55 miles per hour, outpacing many of its rivals on the emerging highway networks. Driving one required skill. You had to keep the revs high to keep that two-stroke engine happy, or it would lose power and smoke heavily. The Krupp Mustang is a bizarre, noisy, and wonderful piece of mechanical history that sounds like absolutely nothing else on Earth. Sadly, the complexity of the two-stroke engine eventually led to its demise, making running examples extremely rare today. If you ever hear a Krupp Mustang approaching, you will feel it in your chest before you see it. It is the heavy metal drummer of the vintage truck world. Now things get serious. We are leaving the highway and heading into the deep, dark forests of British Columbia, Canada. Enter the Hayes HDX. This is not a delivery truck. This is a log-hauling Leviathan. The Hayes HDX was built for one purpose: to haul hundreds of tons of timber down steep, treacherous mountain logging roads where a normal truck would disintegrate in minutes. It sits high off the ground, with square, brutalist styling and a radiator guard that alone weighs more than a compact car. It says, "I eat trees for breakfast." The HDX is physically massive, often featuring 12 to 14-foot wide bunks to hold the logs. But the weirdest and most critical feature of the Hayes HDX is its braking system. Traditional air brakes would burn up and fail on the steep descents with such heavy loads. So, Hayes equipped these giants with water-cooled brakes. The truck carries a massive tank of water solely to spray onto the brake drums to keep them from melting and catching fire. These trucks were often overloaded to carry payload weights of 200,000 to 300,000 pounds. Seeing a Hayes HDX coming down a mountain road with a cloud of steam rising from its wheels is a sight you never forget. It's a monster built for a monster job. The Hayes manufacturing company is no longer with us, but the HDX trucks are so over-engineered that many are still working in the woods today, refusing to retire. They are symbols of Canadian grit and engineering resilience. It is a truck that laughs at the concept of maximum load limits and continues to define the extreme end of the trucking spectrum. And now we arrive at the final boss, the ultimate giant. The weirdest, biggest, and most powerful road-legal truck in history, the Nicholas Tractomas. Built by the French specialist company Nicholas, specifically the TR10X10 model, this machine holds the Guinness World Record for the largest semi-truck on the planet. It is bizarre because it looks like a standard truck that was hit by a gamma-ray burst and turned into the Incredible Hulk. It stands nearly 15 feet tall and over 40 feet long, dwarfing everything else on the road. To give you some perspective, a standard heavy-duty truck might have 500 horsepower. The Tractomas is powered by a V12 Caterpillar engine that pumps out nearly 1,000 horsepower, but it's not about speed, it's about torque. This monster features 5 driven axles, a 10x10 configuration, and is designed to pull super heavy loads. We are talking about transformers and power station generators weighing up to 550 US tons. That is equivalent to pulling a line of 40 city buses all at once from a dead stop. When a Tractomas moves, the earth shakes. It is the perfect conclusion to our list because it represents the absolute limit of what a truck can be. It is engineering taken to the absolute extreme. These trucks are custom-built for specific mega-projects, often in South Africa or Australia, moving infrastructure that keeps civilization running. It is almost too big for the road, requiring a fleet of escort vehicles just to move a few miles. The Nicholas Tractomas isn't just a truck, it is a rolling power station that proves nothing is too heavy if you have enough torque. From the stylish Diamond T to the massive Tractomas, these machines prove that history is anything but boring. Which one would you choose to drive, the elegant American classic or the French giant? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this ride through heavy metal history, please hit that like button. It helps us keep the engines running. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell for more amazing engineering stories. Thanks for watching, and we will see you on the next road trip. What if I told you there was a truck designed to be driven while standing up, or a massive Soviet machine that physically detaches its cab to turn? Welcome to the absolute freak show of automotive history. We aren't talking about rejected sketches or rusty pickups. We are revealing 10 real mechanical monstrosities that defied logic, physics, and safety. From wobbly three-wheeled death traps to armored tank carriers, these vehicles are so bizarre, you will genuinely question how they were ever legal to drive on public roads. Do not look away, because number 1 on this list is a total mind-bender. Smash that subscribe button, hit the bell icon right now, and let's dive straight into the madness. We are starting strong with a mind-bending concept from the Soviet Union that could have changed trucking forever: the MAZ 2000 Perestroika. Debuting at the 1988 Paris Motor Show, this was not just a truck, it was a fully modular system. The engineers at the Minsk automobile plant decided to completely separate the cab from the chassis. The entire powertrain, engine, gearbox, and steering was contained in a separate traction module underneath the cabin. This meant the cab did not tilt. Instead, the entire front unit rotated relative to the cargo box. It was an engineering marvel that eliminated the gap between the cab and the trailer, creating incredible aerodynamics that were years ahead of their time. Technically, the MAZ 2000 was a beast of efficiency designed to maximize every inch of road space. By using this unique modular design, they increased the cargo volume by nearly 350 cubic feet compared to standard trucks of that era. It featured a completely flat floor in the cabin, something we take for granted now but was revolutionary back then. The steering system was hydraulic, and the wheels on the trailer were steered as well, meaning this long combination vehicle had the tight turning radius of a passenger car. Powered by a MAN diesel engine, the Perestroika name symbolized the restructuring of the Soviet Union, and the design truly represented a break from traditional constraints. Sadly, the MAZ 2000 is a massive what-if story in automotive history. Despite blowing everyone away in Paris and proving its worth in real-world test runs, the geopolitical collapse of the Soviet Union killed the project. The funding completely dried up, and the modular dream fell apart before it could reach mass production. The patents for this articulated design were reportedly sold to Western companies, influencing future designs, but the MAZ 2000 itself never hit the highway in numbers. Today, only a couple of prototypes exist, standing as a testament to a moment when Soviet engineering tried to leapfrog the rest of the world with a truck that physically separated the driver from the drive wheels. Next up, we have something much smaller but equally bizarre from Germany. Meet the Volkswagen Type 147, better known as the Fridolin. If you think this looks like a Volkswagen Beetle that got stuck inside a shoebox, you are not far off. In the early 1960s, the German Postal Service needed a very specific vehicle. They wanted something cheap, with huge sliding doors for easy access and enough space to haul mail, but the existing VW Transporter was too big and the Beetle was too small. So Volkswagen raided their parts bin and Frankensteined this little yellow oddity into existence. It is arguably one of the cutest yet weirdest proportions ever seen on a delivery van. The engineering behind the Fridolin is a masterclass in recycling parts to solve a problem. It sits on the chassis of a VW Karmann Ghia because it was wider than the Beetle, providing better stability. The engine is the standard air-cooled flat-four from the Beetle, located in the rear, which meant the cargo floor had to be raised to clear the motor. But the most distinct features were those sliding doors. They were heavy, clunky, and absolutely essential for mail carriers jumping in and out hundreds of times a day. The bodywork was sharp and angular, a complete departure from the curves of the Beetle, giving it the aerodynamics of a brick and a top speed of just around 60 miles per hour. Despite its awkward looks, the Fridolin became a cult classic in Europe. Between 1964 and 1974, over 6,000 were built, mostly for the German and Swiss postal services. Because they were government workhorses, most were driven into the ground and scrapped, making them incredibly rare today. Seeing one on the streets of the US is almost impossible, but when you do, it draws a bigger crowd than a Ferrari. It is a reminder of a time when manufacturers would build a completely unique car just to solve a very specific problem for a government contract. It's ugly, cute perfection that collectors now pay serious money to own. Crossing the channel to Great Britain, we find the Morris J-Type, a van that looks like it drove straight out of a vintage cartoon. Produced from 1948 to 1961, this van is affectionately known as the Pear Drop due to its bulbous sweeping design. In the post-war era, Britain needed to get its economy moving again, and the J-Type was the answer for local bakers, florists, and milkmen. Look closely at the front. The grille is huge and vertical, the headlights sit on the fenders like frog eyes, and the windshield is split. It has a charm that modern vans simply can't match, but driving it was a different story entirely. The layout of the Morris J-Type is primitive by today's standards and quite punishing for the driver. It used a small 1.5-liter side-valve engine derived from the Morris Oxford car. The engine was located inside the cabin, sitting right between the driver and the passenger. In the summer, this meant the cabin became a sauna, cooking the driver as they worked. Even weirder, it had sliding front doors, a common theme for delivery trucks, but these doors slid externally along the body. This was great for tight London streets, allowing drivers to keep the doors open for ventilation, which was necessary given the engine heat. The driver sat directly over the front wheels in a forward control layout, which gave great visibility but zero protection in a crash. The 3-speed gearbox was notorious for being tricky, requiring a skilled hand to navigate without grinding gears loud enough to wake the neighborhood. Today, the Morris J-Type is an absolute icon of British culture. A fully restored J-Type in original livery, like the famous Royal Mail Red, can fetch serious money at auctions. It represents the optimism of the 1950s, wrapped in a curvy steel shell that prioritized style and utility over driver comfort. It is quirky, slow, and undeniably one of the most recognizable silhouettes in history. Now let's look at Germany's strange attempt to turn three-wheelers into four-wheelers, the Tempo Wiking. Produced from 1953 to 1955, this vehicle looks more like a beached boat than a commercial truck. Tempo was famous across Europe for their wobbly hand-seat three-wheelers, and the Wiking was their desperate attempt to create stability and safety with a four-wheel design. However, even with the added wheel, they kept the insane heart of the old line, a tiny, noisy 450 Zamacy two-stroke engine borrowed from Heinkel aircraft technology, creating a combination like no other. The weirdness of the Tempo Wiking lies in the contradictory mix of chassis design and drivetrain. It was front-wheel drive, FWD, with the entire engine and gearbox packed into a low, stubby nose, creating a very distinctive and comical fish-mouth look. When running, the two-stroke engine screamed like an angry chainsaw, puffing out clouds of blue smoke typical of oil-mixed gasoline. Even though having four wheels helped it tip over less, it still offered a raw, vibrating driving experience, making the driver feel like they were piloting an oversized tin toy rather than a serious cargo truck. Although the Tempo Wiking was safer than its infamous three-wheeled predecessor, it was still a marvel of post-war minimalism. It lacked basic amenities, even a fuel gauge. You had to stop and use a dipstick to check if you had gas. The top speed was only about 45 miles per hour going downhill, making driving it on a modern highway today a truly suicidal act. The Wiking is a fascinating link between dangerous three-wheelers and modern trucks, a testament to an era when simply having four wheels was considered a high-end luxury feature. If the Tempo wasn't enough, we have its arch-rival, the Goliath GD 750. The name Goliath is deeply ironic for such a small, three-wheeled machine. Produced by the Borgward Group in the late 40s and early 50s, this was another desperate solution for post-war transport. Like the Tempo, it featured a single front wheel and a truck bed in the back. However, the Goliath was marketed as a more robust, heavy-duty option. The design is utilitarian to the extreme: a flat, vertical front end, a simple canvas roof, and a steering wheel that looked like it was stolen from a tractor. Under the hood, or rather under the seat, The Goliath GD750 typically ran on a small two-stroke engine producing barely enough horsepower to climb a hill. The driving experience was visceral. The vibration from the engine would rattle your teeth, and the lack of sound insulation meant you heard every explosion in the cylinders. What makes the Goliath interesting is that it was surprisingly capable, with a payload capacity of nearly 1,650 pounds. That is practically its own weight. It was a true workhorse that helped rebuild German cities from the rubble, carrying bricks and mortar where larger trucks couldn't fit. Eventually, the economic miracle of the 1950s meant people could afford four wheels. The Goliath GD750 became obsolete as safety regulations tightened and drivers demanded vehicles that didn't threaten to flip over at every roundabout. Goliath eventually moved to four-wheeled cars, but the GD750 remains a symbol of resilience. Collectors now love them for their quirkiness. Watching one of these chug along at a car show is a delight. It puffs blue smoke, makes a distinct ring-ding-ding sound, and looks like a mechanical insect. It is a piece of history you have to respect, even if you wouldn't want to drive it on a highway. We are heading back to the USA for an absolute legend, the Divco Twin. If you grew up in America between the 1940s and the 1970s, this is the milk truck. The shape is unmistakable: a rounded snub-nosed front, a split windshield, and an Art Deco grille that gives it a friendly face. But the weirdness of the Divco isn't just in its looks, it's in how you drove it. These trucks were designed for multi-stop delivery routes, meaning the driver had to get in and out hundreds of times a day. To make this easier, Divco engineered a system where you could drive the truck while standing up. Yes, you heard that right. The Divco featured a dual control system. You could sit and drive like a normal person for long distances, or you could stand on the low floor and operate the vehicle. The throttle and brake were often duplicated or mounted on the gearshift column, a twist-grip throttle, so the milkman could roll between houses without constantly sitting down. The chassis was incredibly heavy-duty, allowing these trucks to carry thousands of pounds of glass milk bottles and ice. They were powered by reliable engines like the Continental Inline 4 or 6, geared extremely low because they rarely exceeded 40 miles per hour on their routes. The longevity of the Divco is insane. The basic design barely changed for decades because it was perfect for its job. You will see these in old movies, and many have been converted into hot rods or promotional vehicles today. But stock examples are mechanical marvels of specific use engineering. The twin in the name referred to the twin pedal arrangement in earlier models, or the twin coach construction style. It is a vehicle that prioritized the worker's efficiency above all else. It's quirky, nostalgic, and arguably the most recognizable delivery truck in American history, representing a bygone era of door-to-door service. Let's look at the DKW Schnelllaster, also known as the Rapid Transporter. Launched in 1949, this van looks like it is melting. The front end slopes down dramatically, creating a continuous aerodynamic line from the roof to the bumper. But the Schnelllaster is on this list because it was quietly revolutionary. While everyone else was building rear-wheel drive trucks, DKW decided to put the engine in the front and drive the front wheels. It was one of the first reliable front-wheel drive vans, a layout that is now standard for almost all modern delivery vans like the Ram ProMaster. By putting the engine and drive wheels at the front, DKW created a completely flat cargo floor in the back. There was no driveshaft tunnel running through the middle, meaning you could load cargo much lower to the ground, just 15 inches high. The engine was a pre-war design, a two-cylinder, two-stroke motor that was simple but loud. The Schnelllaster name was a bit of optimistic marketing, as it wasn't particularly fast, struggling to reach highway speeds. However, the layout allowed for incredibly flexible body styles, pickups, vans, campers, and even luxury buses. The Schnelllaster is a favorite among audiophiles of classic cars because of that distinct two-stroke buzz. It's also rare, many were worked to death in Europe, and few made it to the US. Those that did are now highly prized collector's items. The styling is unapologetically aerodynamic for the 1940s, looking like a bullet train carriage. It proves that you don't need a massive V8 to be interesting. The DKW Schnellasters set the blueprint for the modern minivan and cargo van decades before the term minivan was even invented, making it a true pioneer. Now let's leave the small vans behind and look at a monster. This is the Pacific M26, nicknamed the Dragon Wagon. This wasn't designed to deliver milk. It was designed to carry 40-ton tanks across the battlefields of World War II. It is arguably one of the most aggressive-looking trucks ever built. The cab is armored with heavy steel plating and slotted windows that make it look like a rolling bunker. It sits high off the ground, powered by a massive 190 cubic-inch Hall-Scott 440 gasoline engine. Yes, over 1,000 cubic inches for a gasoline engine, pure American excess. The Dragon Wagon used a chain drive system to the rear wheels, which was old school even for the 1940s, but it was incredibly tough and easier to repair in the field. It was a 6x6 vehicle, meaning all 6 wheels were driven. The rear 4 wheels were driven by those massive exposed chains. Inside the armored cab, it was loud, hot, and cramped for the crew of 7. It had huge winches on the back to drag damaged tanks onto its trailer. The sheer presence of this truck is terrifying. It looks like something out of a Mad Max movie, but it was real, and it saved countless assets during the war. After the war, many Dragon Wagons were sold as surplus and used in heavy logging or mining, where their immense power was needed. But they were thirsty beasts, drinking fuel at a rate of gallons per mile, not miles per gallon. Today, seeing a restored M26 is a religious experience for truck lovers. The sound of that massive Hall-Scott engine roaring to life, the clanking of the drive chains, and the armored silhouette make it the ultimate tough guy truck. It's a machine built for one purpose: brute force, and it executes that purpose perfectly. We are heading back to the UK for a truck that was designed around the driver's eyes, the Morris FG. Produced from 1960 to 1980, this truck was everywhere in Britain, but it looked incredibly odd. It was nicknamed the Threepenny Bit Cab. Why? Because the cabin was angled. Instead of a square box, the rear corners of the cab were cut off diagonally, and the doors were mounted on these angled sections. This gave the cab the shape of a threepenny coin. But this wasn't just for style, it was a brilliant safety feature designed for the narrow streets of the UK. The angled doors were suicide doors, hinged at the rear, but because of the angle, when you opened them, they didn't swing out into traffic. They stayed within the width of the truck's body. This was perfect for narrow streets and prevented drivers from getting their doors taken off by passing cars. Furthermore, the Morris FG had curb view windows, extra windows located low down near the driver's feet in the front corners. This allowed the driver to see exactly where the curb was, making parking this commercial truck incredibly easy and preventing damage to the wheels. Despite these clever features, the Morris FG was a bit of a torture chamber to drive. The engine was essentially in the cabin with you, under a thin metal cover, so it was noisy and hot. The gear stick was awkwardly placed and the suspension was stiff. But it was a workhorse. It served as a bread van, a tow truck, and a general utility vehicle for decades. Its threepenny bit shape is a prime example of form following function. It looks weird to us now, but every angle on that truck was calculated to help the driver navigate the tight, congested streets of 1960s England. Finally, we end with the grandfather of American heavy trucking, the Mack AC. This truck is the reason Mack has a bulldog as its mascot. Built from 1916 to 1938, the AC is instantly recognizable by its snub nose. Unlike modern trucks with a big grille in front, the Mack AC had its radiator mounted behind the engine right in front of the driver's windshield. This gave the front end a sloping, tapered look, protecting the radiator from damage during WWI battlefields and construction sites. It was a design born from the necessity of war and hard labor. The Mack AC was chain-driven, a feature Mack stuck with long after others switched to drive shafts simply because it was durable. During World War I, British soldiers testing the truck were amazed by its tenacity in the mud. They said it had the appearance and the attitude of a British bulldog, tough, short-nosed, and impossible to stop. The name stuck, and Mack adopted the bulldog as their official logo. The hood was made of sheet metal that flared out to the sides, giving it broad shoulders. It looked muscular and ready to fight, embodying the spirit of early American industry. Driving a Mack AC was a workout. It had no power steering, mechanical brakes that required a heavy foot, and a transmission that required double clutching perfection. But it built America. It built the dams, the roads, and the skyscrapers of the Roaring '20s. When you look at a Mack AC, you aren't just looking at a weird old truck. You are looking at the machine that defined the reputation of American trucking for a century. It is the ultimate classic, a mechanical legend that proved ugly can be beautiful if it gets the job done right. From the modular Soviet giants to the tiny German three-wheelers, these trucks show that automotive history is full of surprises. They might be weird, but they paved the way for the vehicles we drive today. Which one was your favorite? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this ride, don't forget to hit like and subscribe for more amazing car stories. Thanks for watching, and see you next time. What if I told you that a rusted farm truck from your grandfather's era just sold for more than a brand new Italian supercar? Welcome to the high-stakes world of classic American steel. Today we are cracking open the vault to reveal the top 10 rarest and most legendary old-school trucks ever built. We are talking about unstoppable 4x4 civilian tanks, insane factory loopholes that outran pure muscle cars, and gorgeous post-war masterpieces. But be warned, the phantom vehicle lurking at our number 10 spot is so incredibly rare, even hardcore automotive historians debate if it actually still exists. You simply cannot afford to miss this. Smash that subscribe button, buckle up, and watch until the very last second to discover the ultimate American unicorn. The birth of the American trucking industry can be traced back to a single revolutionary machine, the Ford Model TT. Introduced in July 1917, this was not just a slightly modified passenger car, it was a dedicated workhorse engineered to handle the heavy lifting that a rapidly expanding industrial nation demanded. Back then, a brand new Model TT bare chassis would set you back a mere $600. Fast forward to today, and a fully restored museum-quality example can easily command upwards of $50,000 at a high-end classic car auction. What made the Model TT so special was its reinforced heavy-duty frame and a specialized worm-drive rear axle that gave it a massive, officially rated 2,000-pound payload capacity. It utilized the exact same 177 cubic-inch, 20-horsepower four-cylinder engine as the Model T, but with significantly lower gearing. This allowed it to pull incredibly heavy loads over the treacherous, unpaved dirt roads of early 20th century America. However, this unmatched pulling power came at the cost of speed. The recommended top speed was a blistering 15 miles per hour. Buyers initially only purchased the bare chassis, relying on independent coach builders to construct custom wooden beds and cabs suited to their specific farming, delivery, or firefighting trades. The Model TT essentially built the foundation of the Ford commercial empire, proving that there was a massive market for a tough, reliable commercial vehicle. It remained in production until 1927, selling over 1 million units and forever changing the landscape of American agriculture. But if you think the Model TT was revolutionary, wait until you see how Ford completely changed the game after World War II. After World War II, America was ready to rebuild, and Ford answered the call in 1948 with the introduction of the legendary F-Series, starting with the iconic half-ton Ford F1. This truck marked a massive shift in automotive history. For the very first time, Ford built a truck on a dedicated truck chassis rather than simply beefing up a passenger car frame. Originally priced at around $1,200, the F1 was an accessible tool. Today, pristine modifications of the F1 routinely fetch well over $100,000. The F1 was officially marketed as the bonus-built truck, And it introduced a concept that was wildly foreign to commercial vehicles at the time: driver comfort. Ford widened the cab by 7 inches, moved the steering column for better ergonomics, and installed a thicker coil spring seat. Under the hood, buyers could choose between the highly reliable 226 cubic inch flathead inline-6 or the legendary 239 cubic inch flathead V8 engine, providing the perfect balance of low-end torque and smooth open highway capability. This vehicle ignited the famous Detroit rivalry, setting the absolute gold standard for what a modern pickup should be. The F1's rounded front fenders, distinct flat 5-bar grille, and aggressive stance made it an instant classic. It wasn't just a machine, it was a bold statement of post-war American prosperity and engineering prowess. It proved that you could drive to the job site on Monday and take your family to town on Saturday. Ford had the market cornered, but Chevrolet was about to unleash a masterpiece that would redefine American roads. In the fierce Battle of Detroit, Chevrolet refused to play second fiddle. In the summer of 1947, they launched the Advanced Design Series, with the half-ton Chevrolet 3100 leading the charge as the #1 selling truck in America. This was Chevy's first major redesign post-war, and it was an absolute showstopper. Back then, you could drive one off the dealer lot for roughly $1,100. Today, the advanced design trucks are the absolute darlings of the custom hot rod world, crossing auction blocks for over $150,000. The Chevrolet 3100 was a pure design marvel. It featured a larger, stronger, and sleeker body than its pre-war predecessors, boasting a fully integrated 5-window cab option that offered unprecedented visibility and a gorgeous panoramic look. Chevy focused heavily on ergonomics, introducing fresh air heaters and a dashboard that actually looked like it belonged in a stylish sedan. Powered by the incredibly durable 216 cubic inch Thriftmaster inline-6 engine, the 3100 was not built to win drag races, but it was renowned for its bulletproof reliability. The cultural impact of the 3100 cannot be overstated. It became the quintessential image of the classic American farm truck, deeply embedded in Hollywood movies, vintage advertisements, and Americana art. It was smooth, reliable, and undeniably beautiful with its pontoon fenders. It frequently outlasted the very people who originally purchased it for hard labor on the family farm. While Chevrolet was busy making things look pretty and dominating the light-duty passenger market, Ford was quietly building a factory lifted off road monster that would change the 4x4 game forever. Enter the Ford F-250 Highboy, a legendary moniker given to 4x4 F-250s built from 1967 up until mid-year 1977. This truck wasn't just built, it was weaponized for the dirt. The nickname Highboy was never official Ford nomenclature, but it perfectly described the truck's aggressive, towering factory-lifted stance. In the late 60s, a new 4x4 F-250 cost around $3,500. Today, finding a rust-free, original Highboy is extremely difficult, and collectors are willing to pay upwards of $80,000. The secret to the Highboy's towering ride height was its unique drivetrain geometry. To accommodate the massive front differential and leaf spring suspension, Ford used a divorce transfer case. This meant the transfer case was separated from the transmission and connected by a short intermediate drive shaft. This engineering necessity required the entire truck frame to sit roughly 4 inches higher than its two-wheel drive counterparts. This factory lift allowed owners to slap on massive 35-inch off-road tires right off the showroom floor without ever needing to cut or modify the original steel fenders. The Highboy represented a time when trucks were unapologetically utilitarian. It rode rough, it was loud, and it drank gas like a thirsty camel, but it possessed a mechanical purity that modern off-roaders can only dream of. Equipped with heavy-duty Dana front axles, it was the undisputed king of the construction site and the deep logging trail. It was built to take severe punishment and ask for more. Rugged off-road capability was great, but soon Americans wanted true luxury combined with their utility. Enter the 1970s game changer. By the mid-1970s, the pickup truck was undergoing a massive identity crisis. It was no longer just a farm implement. It was rapidly becoming a daily driver for the suburban family. Ford recognized this cultural shift and introduced the F-150 in 1975. But it was the high-end Ranger XLT trim of the Dentside era that truly changed the landscape. Priced around $4,500 back then, a mint condition, historically accurate, two-tone F-150 Ranger XLT now frequently commands over $60,000. The Ranger XLT package brought unprecedented car-like luxury to the rugged F-Series. It featured deep pile color-keyed carpeting, simulated wood-grain dash appliques, factory air conditioning, and plush cloth or vinyl seating that rivaled the comfort of a luxury sedan. The exterior was draped in stunning two-tone paint jobs, brilliantly separated by intricate chrome moldings and the famous racetrack trim. Underneath the glamorous exterior, however, it still housed powerhouse engines like the massive 460 cubic inch V8, proving you didn't have to sacrifice towing capacity for comfort. Trivia time. Speaking of classic truck beds, do you know why early manufacturers overwhelmingly preferred wooden floors over stamped steel? Drop your guess in the comments below and I will pin the correct answer. Hint: it was not just to look pretty or save money. The F-150 Ranger XLT proved that America was finally ready for a premium truck experience. Ford brought the luxury in the 70s, but Chevrolet actually did the gentleman's pickup decades earlier with a very weird material. Long before the luxury truck craze of the 70s and 80s, Chevrolet took a massive, unprecedented gamble in 1955 with the introduction of the Cameo carrier. This was America's very first true gentleman's pickup. Chevy wanted a truck that looked just as at home parked at a high-end country club as it did outside a local hardware store. Originally retailing for about $2,000, which was a very steep premium over their standard models, the Cameo was a rare sight. Today, a concourse-quality Cameo can easily fetch over $120,000. What made the Cameo wildly unique and historically significant was its bed. Instead of the traditional step-side design where the rear fenders bulged out, Chevy utilized sleek, smooth fiberglass bedside panels. This was the exact same lightweight material used in the new Corvette. They attached these fiberglass panels to the standard steel bed, creating a seamless flush appearance from the cab all the way to the tailgate. The Cameo also featured unique chrome bumpers, a hidden spare tire compartment, and a beautiful two-tone interior. It was powered by Chevy's legendary 265 cubic inch small block V8. Despite its undeniable beauty and strong V8 performance, the Cameo was simply too expensive for the average blue-collar worker and was quietly discontinued by 1958. However, its flush fender design permanently revolutionized the entire industry, forcing every single manufacturer to eventually adopt the fleet-side truck beds we see on every modern pickup today. It was a beautiful pioneer. Fancy is nice, but what if you needed a vehicle to literally conquer a mountain? You would need a civilian tank. When World War II ended, returning troops wanted a truck that was as tough, reliable, and capable as the military vehicles they had relied on to survive overseas. Dodge delivered exactly that in 1946 with the legendary Power Wagon. This wasn't just a heavily modified civilian truck. It was essentially a 3/4-ton military weapons carrier wearing a slightly different civilian suit. You could buy one brand new for about $1,600. Fast forward to the modern era, and custom Restomod Power Wagons are absolute elite collector items, regularly shattering $300,000. The Power Wagon was an absolute, unapologetic brute. It was the first mass-produced 4x4 civilian truck in America, featuring a virtually indestructible 230 cubic inch flathead inline-6 engine. What it lacked in high-speed horsepower, it made up for with pure, unstoppable low-end torque. It featured a massive factory-available 10,000-pound power takeoff winch mounted right on the front bumper. This winch was entirely capable of pulling the heavy truck up a vertical cliff or rescuing lesser vehicles from deep, muddy swamps. The Dodge Power Wagon wasn't built for comfort. It was built for absolute survival in the harshest conditions on Earth. Its utilitarian styling remained largely unchanged for decades, simply because you cannot improve upon a tank. It permanently cemented Dodge's reputation for building the toughest trucks on the planet. The Power Wagon was a beast in the mud, but another Chevrolet required a highly specialized aftermarket conversion just to keep up with it in the dirt. In the early 1950s, if you wanted a 4x4 Chevy or GMC, you could not just check a box at the local dealership. General Motors simply did not build a factory 4x4 pickup until the late 1950s. Enter the Northwestern Auto Parts Company, better known as NAPCO. They created a legendary, highly engineered four-wheel drive conversion kit known as the Power Pack. A brand new Chevy truck with a dealer-installed NAPCO conversion cost around $2,500. Today, pristine, verified models sell for well over $150,000. The NAPCO Power Pack was a stroke of pure engineering genius. It allowed certified dealerships to transform a standard two-wheel drive Chevy 3100 into an unstoppable mountain goat in just a few hours, with minimal cutting or welding to the factory frame. The kit included a heavy-duty front drive axle, a divorce transfer case, and specialized drive shafts. These converted trucks were heavily utilized by utility companies, the military, and adventurous farmers who needed to traverse impossible mountainous terrain where standard trucks would immediately sink and get stuck. By 1957, General Motors finally recognized the massive consumer demand and started installing NAPCO systems directly on the factory assembly line, before eventually designing their own in-house 4x4 system for the 1960 model year. Because they were exclusively used as extreme work trucks, very few authentic NAPCO Chevys survived the brutal conditions they were subjected to, making them absolute unicorns today. We have seen off-road kings, but what happens when a truck decides to outrun a Corvette and break every emission law in the book? Welcome to 1978, the dark ages of American muscle cars. Strict EPA emission regulations had completely choked the life out of once mighty V8 engines, but Dodge engineers found a brilliant, completely legal loophole. Because the government's emission rules primarily applied to passenger cars and light trucks, they realized that a truck with a gross vehicle weight rating strictly over 6,000 pounds was entirely exempt from having a restrictive catalytic converter. To exploit this, Dodge bumped the rating to exactly 6,050 pounds, and thus the Dodge Lil Red Express was born. Dodge took their D150 short wheelbase step-side truck, painted it bright canyon red, and slapped massive gold decals on the doors. But the real magic was under the hood, a highly modified 360 cubic inch V8 featuring the E58 Police Interceptor code, breathing freely through a 4-barrel carburetor. Because it had no catalytic converters to restrict exhaust flow, Dodge boldly routed the exhaust up through massive functional chrome vertical smokestacks right behind the cab. The result was a jaw-dropping 225 net horsepower. The Lil Red Express was an absolute menace on the streets. In fact, Car and Driver magazine famously tested it and declared it the fastest American-made vehicle from 0 to 100 miles per hour in 1978, utterly humiliating the Chevrolet Corvette, the Pontiac Trans Am, and everything else on the road. It was a giant middle finger to the EPA and a glorious, roaring final chapter of the American muscle car era. A muscle truck is crazy, but our final truck is a ghost. It is a heavy-duty beast disguised as a high-end luxury hauler. We have arrived at the ultimate classic truck unicorn, the Diamond T Model 201. Founded in Chicago, the Diamond T Motor Car Company was famous worldwide for building massive heavy-duty commercial rigs and military transport vehicles. However, from 1938 to 1949, they built the Model 201, a highly specialized one-ton pickup truck designed exclusively for elite clients. It was widely and accurately known as the Cadillac of trucks. Back in the 1940s, it cost over $1,000, a massive premium over a Ford or Chevy. The Diamond T201 was an absolute masterpiece of Art Deco styling. It featured a massive, intricate chrome grille, gracefully flowing pontoon fenders, a two-piece V windshield, and a beautifully appointed interior that included a passenger car-style dashboard. It even had a deluxe banjo steering wheel and standard features like an electric clock and a cigar lighter. These luxuries were practically unheard of in a commercial work truck. Underneath this beautiful shell was a nearly indestructible frame and a bulletproof 236 cubic inch Hercules inline-six engine. Diamond T absolutely refused to compromise on quality, heavily over-engineering every single mechanical component. Because of its exceptionally high price tag, it was primarily purchased by wealthy gentleman farmers, successful contractors, and Texas oil tycoons who wanted to arrive at the job site in absolute style. When production finally ended in 1949, the Model 201 faded into legend. Finding a verified original today is the holy grail of classic truck restoration, a perfect, unrepeatable blend of unstoppable brawn and unmatched elegance. From the utilitarian roots of the Ford Model TT to the loophole-exploiting muscle of the Dodge Lil Red Express and the ultra-rare elegance of the Diamond T201, these classic trucks did not just haul cargo, they literally carried the weight of American automotive history. They are mechanical legends that will never be duplicated. Which of these iconic trucks would you choose for your dream garage? Let us know down in the comments. Do not forget to hit that subscribe button, smash the like, and keep the classic spirit alive. We will see you in the next one. Start your engines, but forget everything you know about standard hauling. Today we are leaving the boring world of modern logistics behind to witness the absolute maddest creations ever to hit the asphalt. We are entering a timeline where engineers ignored every rule in the book to create hallucinations made of steel. What happens when you put a jet engine in a semi-truck, or design a pickup with absolutely no doors? In this video, we are counting down 10 of the weirdest old-school trucks that actually existed. These aren't just drawings, they are mechanical rebels that defied explanation. Buckle up, hit that subscribe button, and let me know in the comments, which of these monsters would you dare to drive? Let's roll. If you think getting into a truck is as simple as opening a door, the 1967 Dodge Diora is here to prove you wrong. This vehicle is widely considered the world's coolest concept truck, but it has one glaring omission. It has no side doors, none. To enter the driver's seat, you have to perform a gymnastic feat. The entire front windshield is a hatch that swings upward on a pivot. You literally have to climb through the face of the truck, spin around, and drop into the bucket seats. It is an entrance that guarantees all eyes are on you. Underneath this radical chop-top skin lies the chassis of a humble Dodge A100 compact pickup. But the Diora was far from humble. Designed by the legendary Alexander brothers, it moved the trusty slant six engine further back into the bed, creating a mid-engine layout. This shift was necessary to accommodate that futuristic cab-forward design. Weighing in at roughly 3,000 pounds, it wasn't built for speed, topping out around typical highway speeds of 70 miles per hour. The steering wheel even had to be a swing-away model just to allow the driver's legs to pass through safely during entry. The Diora looks like it drove straight out of a sci-fi comic book and landed in the 1960s. It wasn't just a show pony, it was a fully functional vehicle that challenged the very definition of a pickup truck. It won the prestigious Riddler Award in 1967, cementing its place in custom car history not as a workhorse but as a piece of rolling art. While it never made it to mass production, likely because climbing through a windshield isn't practical for a delivery driver, it remains an icon. It forces us to ask, why be practical when you can be unforgettable? Travel back to the late 1930s, an era obsessed with the future. This was the age of Art Deco and streamlined moderne, where everything from toasters to trains was designed to look fast. The 1939 Dodge Airflow tanker is the ultimate expression of this philosophy applied to a heavy-duty truck. Commissioned by Texaco, these fuel tankers looked like futuristic locomotives cruising down the highway. The design features a continuous flowing body that seamlessly integrates the cab, the fenders, and the massive 200-gallon fuel tank into one smooth aerodynamic shape that turned heads everywhere it went. Technically, these trucks were marvels of their time. Dodge utilized a bridge truss construction for the tank itself, which acted as a structural component. This allowed for a lower center of gravity and better handling than the boxy, top-heavy tankers of the day. Weighing over 15,000 pounds when fully loaded, it was powered by a robust Dodge inline-six engine. While it looked fast enough to break records, it was designed for steady cruising at around 45 to 50 miles per hour. The airflow wasn't just about vanity. The streamlining actually improved fuel efficiency, a critical factor for a fleet vehicle. They were painted in Texaco's bright red, becoming moving billboards that promised speed and modernity. However, the onset of World War II and the changing tastes of the 1940s meant the airflow era was short-lived. Most of these beautiful giants were driven into the ground during the war effort and eventually scrapped. Today, seeing a surviving airflow tanker is like spotting a dinosaur, a massive, elegant creature from a time when industrial design prioritized beauty just as much as function. It begs the question, why are modern fuel trucks so boring compared to this masterpiece? Imagine standing next to a semi-truck at a traffic light. You expect the deep, rhythmic chug of a diesel engine. Instead, you hear the high-pitched, piercing whine of a jet plane preparing for takeoff. You aren't hallucinating, you are looking at the Leyland gas turbine truck. In the 1960s and 70s, British manufacturer Leyland believed the future of long-haul trucking wasn't diesel, it was jet propulsion. They built a series of prototypes powered by regenerative gas turbine engines, capable of producing between 350 and 400 horsepower. It was a bold vision of a smoother, quieter trucking future. The engineering behind this was fascinating. The turbine engine had far fewer moving parts than a piston engine, meaning less vibration and a much smoother ride for the driver. Rated for a gross train weight of nearly 40 tons, it could cruise effortlessly at 70 miles per hour. It could run on almost any flammable liquid, diesel, kerosene, or jet fuel. Leyland fitted these engines into their ergomatic cabs, modifying the grille and intake to suck in the massive amounts of air the turbine required. On the highway, they were powerful beasts that signaled the arrival of the space age. So, why don't we drive jet trucks today? The reality was harsh. While the engine was simple, the heat it produced was intense. The exhaust was hot enough to melt the asphalt or singe the car behind it if the driver wasn't careful. Furthermore, fuel economy at idle was terrible. Turbines loved to run at full speed, not sit in traffic. Ultimately, the oil crisis of the 1970s killed the project, leaving the Leyland gas turbine as a fascinating what-if in automotive history. It remains a testament to a time when we tried to make trucks fly, figuratively speaking. If you visited Paris in the 1950s, you might have seen a vehicle that looked like it was designed by aliens for a sightseeing tour. This is the Citroën U55 Curus Cityrama. Built on the sturdy chassis of a Citroën U55 truck, the bodywork was crafted by the coach builder Curus to be the ultimate tour bus. It featured a double-decker design with a futuristic glass-enclosed upper deck and a bizarre jutting shark nose front end. It looked less like a bus and more like a spaceship cruising the boulevards of Paris, capturing the imagination of everyone who saw it. The goal was visibility. The Cityrama was designed to give tourists an unobstructed view of the Eiffel Tower and the Louvre. The amount of glass and steel used in this construction was staggering, pushing the total weight to nearly 10 tons. Mechanically, it relied on the standard Citroën drivetrain, which had to work incredibly hard to push this heavy, unaerodynamic glass brick through the city streets. Speed was not the priority here. It crawled along at leisure speeds, allowing tourists to take photos, although it struggled significantly on any steep incline due to its immense weight. However, the Cityrama had a fatal flaw: the greenhouse effect. With all that glass and no modern air conditioning, the interior would become an oven on sunny days. Tourists would literally bake inside their futuristic viewing capsule while trying to enjoy the architecture. Despite this, the Citarama remains one of the most visually distinct vehicles ever made. It is a symbol of a time when the experience of the passenger was valued above all practical engineering concerns. It is weird, it is wonderful, and it is uniquely French. In the world of truck design, there is weird, and then there is Luigi Colani weird. The Wienermobile is a prime example of Colani's philosophy of biodesign, the idea that there are no straight lines in nature, so there shouldn't be any in cars either. Built on the chassis of a Mercedes LP 608, this vehicle looks like a giant white insect or a melted spacecraft skimming the asphalt. The cabin is a bubble of glass and curves, completely detaching the driver from the traditional boxy truck environment. It stands as a radical departure from everything we know about cargo transport. This wasn't just an art project, it had a specific technical purpose. It was commissioned to test tires for high-speed performance. The bizarre shape was aerodynamically optimized to achieve an extremely low drag coefficient, far superior to any standard truck. This allowed the vehicle to reach higher testing speeds and maintain stability where a brick-shaped truck would fail. While the base Mercedes engine was standard, the aerodynamics allowed it to slice through the air with minimal resistance, proving that efficiency comes from shape, not just horsepower. The driver sat high up in a central cockpit, controlling the vehicle with a view that resembled a fighter jet pilot's perspective more than a trucker's. The Wienermobile challenges our brain because it removes the familiar reference points of a truck. There is no flat grille, no square bumper, no vertical windshield. It is a fluid sculpture powered by a diesel engine. While Colani's designs were often dismissed as too radical for production, they pushed the boundaries of aerodynamics in trucking. But let's be honest, nothing on the road today looks as wild as this. Look at the front of a Tempo Matador and tell me it doesn't look like a sad puppy or a surprised fish. This German utility truck from the late 1940s is instantly recognizable by its face. The headlights are positioned low, giving it a distinct, almost anthropomorphic expression. But the weirdness isn't just skin deep, it's in the engineering layout. The Matador was one of the few front-wheel drive trucks of its time, a feature that gave it a completely flat cargo bed low to the ground. This made loading heavy goods significantly easier than in American trucks. To achieve this, the early Matadors used a 25-horsepower engine sourced from Volkswagen. Yes, just 25 horsepower to haul a payload of over 2,000 pounds. The top speed was barely 45 miles per hour if you were going downhill with a strong wind. But here's the catch. Volkswagen didn't want a competitor using their engines, so Tempo eventually had to switch suppliers to Austin or ILO engines. The engine was tucked right behind the cab, driving the front wheels. This layout was brilliant for space, but meant the poor little engine was constantly overworked. Despite its underpowered nature, the Matador was a hero of post-war reconstruction in Germany. It was simple, versatile, and the low loading height made it a favorite for delivery men and tradespeople. Today, they are incredibly rare and sought after by collectors who love that goofy, lovable face. It stands as a reminder that you don't need massive horsepower or an aggressive design to be a legend. Sometimes you just need a lot of character and a friendly face. In the 1950s, the Fagel Twin Coach Company decided to rethink the delivery van. The result was a vehicle that looks like a giant beetle or a loaf of bread on wheels. The Fagel Twin Coach delivery is defined by its incredibly round, bulbous shape. Unlike the sharp corners of modern FedEx or UPS trucks, the Fagel had curves everywhere. It was designed with an integral frame construction, meaning the body and chassis were one unit. This monocoque design provided maximum interior space with a relatively short wheelbase, perfect for navigating tight city grids. This design was all about urban efficiency. The round shape wasn't just for style. It allowed the truck to navigate tight city alleyways without snagging its corners on buildings or other cars. Inside, the driver had a commanding view of the road through a split windshield. The engine was typically an International Harvester or similar reliable powertrain, tucked away to maximize cargo floor space. These trucks offered a massive interior volume of over 300 cubic feet, while remaining smaller than many passenger cars of the era. They were the backbone of postal services and bakeries. There is something undeniably cute about the Fajol. It reflects the optimism of 1950s American design, where even a utility vehicle deserved to have style and presence. Seeing one today is a visual shock because we are so used to the utilitarian, boxy designs of modern logistics. The Fajol proves that a delivery truck can have a soul and a silhouette that makes you smile. While most have rust away, the survivors are cherished as reminders of a time when your morning mail arrived in a giant friendly Beetle. General Motors took a massive gamble in the 1960s with the Corvair, a car featuring an air-cooled flat-six engine mounted in the rear. They decided to apply this same radical architecture to a pickup truck, creating the Corvair 95 rampside. Because the engine was in the back under the bed, the rear floor had to be raised. This created a problem for loading cargo. GM's solution: a literal drawbridge on the side of the truck. The ramp side featured a massive door on the passenger side that folded down to create a solid ramp. This innovation allowed you to roll a wheelbarrow, a lawnmower, or heavy equipment straight into the deep well of the truck bed, right in the center of the vehicle. It was a stroke of genius. The truck was rated for a payload of roughly 1,800 pounds, and the forward control design meant the driver sat ahead of the front wheels. The rear engine layout provided excellent traction even when the truck was empty, a common issue for traditional light pickups. With about 80 to 95 horsepower depending on the year, it wasn't a powerhouse, but it was incredibly clever. However, the ramp side was undeniably weird. Driving it felt different. The steering was light, and the weight distribution was unlike anything else on the road. While the ramp was brilliant, the raised rear bed floor limited the space for large, flat loads like plywood sheets. Production ran only from 1961 to 1964, making it a short-lived experiment. It remains a cult classic today, a testament to a time when GM was willing to try completely different engineering concepts to solve everyday problems. Is it a luxury car? Is it a truck? The 1937 Studebaker Coupe Express is the grandfather of the El Camino, but it did it with infinitely more class. In the 1930s, if you bought a truck, you usually got a rough, bare-bones cabin. Studebaker changed that. They took the front end, chassis, and luxurious interior of their Dictator passenger sedan and seamlessly mated it with a steel pickup bed. The result was a vehicle that offered the comfort and style of a gentleman's coupe with the utility of a farm truck. Under the hood lay a smooth L-head inline-six engine producing about 90 horsepower. While that sounds modest today, in 1937 it allowed the Coupe Express to reach speeds of up to 85 miles per hour, significantly faster than the average truck of the day. It weighed roughly 3,300 pounds and featured a double-walled steel bed, proving it wasn't just for show. It was designed for the gentleman farmer or the business owner who wanted to haul goods during the week, but drive to church in style on Sunday without looking like a laborer. The production numbers were incredibly low, making the Coupe Express one of the rarest trucks in existence today. It stands out because it doesn't look like a Frankenstein creation. The lines flow perfectly from the hood to the tailgate. It represents a brief, beautiful moment in history where utility didn't have to mean ugly. It is, quite possibly, the most elegant pickup truck ever built, blurring the lines between work and leisure decades before the modern luxury truck market even existed. We end our list with a truck that might look more familiar but was a revolution in its own right: the DAF 3300 Space Cab. Before this truck arrived in the 1980s, long-haul European truckers lived in cramped, miserable boxes. You couldn't stand up. You could barely move. Dutch manufacturer DAF looked at this and said, "No more." They introduced the concept of the high-roof sleeper, creating a literal apartment on wheels. The Space Cab was weird at the time because of its proportions. It looked like a block of flats moving down the highway. But inside, it was a revelation. For the first time, a driver could stand up fully to put on their trousers. It featured better insulation and a turbocharged, intercooled 11.6-liter diesel engine, producing up to 330 horsepower. This engine was a beast, capable of pulling gross combination weights of 40 tons across continents with ease. The squared-off, boxy design was purely functional, maximizing every inch of volume allowed by European length regulations. It turned the driver's seat from a place of work into a place of living. While it lacks the curves of the Art Deco era or the jet engines of Leyland, the DAF 3300 is on this list because it changed the human experience of trucking. It proved that a truck could be a home. Every massive sleeper cab you see on the American highways today owes a debt of gratitude to this boxy Dutch pioneer that dared to prioritize the driver's comfort above all else. It reminds us that sometimes the weirdest idea is simply treating the operator like a human being. From trucks with no doors to buses made of glass and engines that sound like jet planes, we've seen that the history of trucking is anything but boring. These engineers didn't just build vehicles, they built dreams, experiments, and sometimes beautiful mistakes. If you could park just one of these weird machines in your garage, which one would it be? The futuristic Diora or the elegant Studebaker? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this ride through history, smash that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the world of amazing machines. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next road trip. Forget the boring trucks you see every day. Transport history is hiding the most insane and bizarre mechanical monsters you won't believe actually existed. From massive 8-wheel drive giants with the power to crush any terrain to tiny, freakish machines that defy all laws of physics and logic. This isn't science fiction. These are real flesh and steel machines that once ruled the streets. Today we are unlocking the secret files on the 10 most unique and rare vintage trucks in the world. Brace yourself, buckle up tight, and hit that subscribe button right now because this trip into the past is about to get incredibly bumpy. Let's start with a true heavyweight champion from the United Kingdom, the Scamell Highwayman. If you grew up in Britain between the 1950s and 70s, this wasn't just a truck. It was the undisputed king of the road. Produced by Scamell lorries, the Highwayman was iconic for its distinct, almost aggressive bonneted design that looked like a bulldog ready to bite. While most trucks of the era were transitioning to flat-front cab-over designs to save space, Scamell stuck to their guns with this massive protruding nose. It wasn't built for speed, topping out at around 30 to 40 miles per hour, but it was built to pull absolutely anything. What makes the Highwayman truly unique is its legendary status among fairground showmen. Originally designed for heavy haulage and general transport, this truck found a second life, pulling massive fairground rides and electric generators. Why? Because it was built like a tank with a solid steel chassis. It was often configured as a ballast tractor, a short, heavy truck loaded with concrete weights to generate enough traction to pull incredible loads up to 50 or even 100 tons. The engines, often sourced from Gardner or Leyland, were loud, reliable beasts that could run forever, provided you didn't mind the deafening noise inside the cabin. Visually, it is unmistakable due to the motif on the radiator grille and those singular round headlamps sitting proudly on the fenders. Later models even pioneered the use of glass-reinforced plastic, fiberglass for the bonnet, a revolutionary move in the 1960s that prevented rust and reduced weight. Driving one was a workout. It had no power steering and the heater was practically non-existent. Today, a restored Highwayman is a piece of industrial art. But while the Scamell was busy hauling massive carnival rides across Britain, over in Italy, engineers were building a truck so small you could almost park it in the Scamell's glove box. If the Scamell is a Great Dane, the Piaggio Ape Pentaro is a Chihuahua trying to pull a sled. You have probably heard of the Piaggio Ape, the famous three-wheeled Italian delivery scooter, but the Pentaro is something much weirder. The name comes from the Greek word for five, because this is a five-wheeled tractor-trailer. Yes, Piaggio actually built a miniature semi-truck based on a scooter engine. It was introduced in the early 1960s as a solution for navigating the incredibly narrow, winding streets of ancient Italian cities, where a full-size truck would simply get stuck between buildings. The engineering is hilarious but brilliant. The driver sits on a saddle, steering with motorcycle handlebars, but behind him is a professional fifth-wheel coupling, just like on a giant 18-wheeler. It was powered by a tiny two-stroke engine, producing barely enough horsepower to reach 40 miles per hour downhill. Despite its size, it was rated to carry loads of up to 2,500 lbs, 700 kg, making it a serious tool for transporting vegetables, wine, or building materials. Because it was an articulated vehicle, it could turn in extremely tight circles, making it the ultimate urban delivery weapon for tight corners. However, driving the Pentaro was terrifying. The stability was questionable, and with a heavy load, braking required foresight and prayer because the trailer brakes were mechanical. Today, the Pentaro is one of the rarest versions of the ape family. Collectors go crazy for them because they represent a time when Italy was rebuilding itself, and no idea was too crazy if it helped get the job done. It looks like a toy brought to life, but it worked hard for a living. From the tiny streets of Italy, we now jump to the rugged terrain of Czechoslovakia to meet a truck that laughs in the face of mud, snow, and gravity. When it comes to off-road trucking, there is one name that stands above the rest, Tatra, and the Tatra 138 is the machine that cemented that reputation. Produced in Czechoslovakia from 1959 to 1971, this truck is an engineering marvel that defies convention. Unlike almost every other truck on the planet that uses a ladder frame chassis, the Tatra 138 is built around a unique central backbone tube. Imagine a giant steel pipe running down the center of the truck, protecting all the drive shafts inside. This makes the truck incredibly rigid and virtually twist-proof, allowing it to carry payloads of over 12 tons across broken terrain. But the real magic lies in its swing axles. Each wheel moves independently, allowing the Tatra 138 to crawl over boulders, ditches, and deep mud that would snap a normal truck in half. Powering this beast was the T928 engine, an air-cooled V8 diesel producing around 180 horsepower. Why air-cooled? Because water freezes in the Siberian winter and boils in the desert summer. Air does neither. Tatra engines were designed to work anywhere, from the freezing taiga to the scorching tropics, without a radiator to worry about. Top speed was around 45 mph, but off-road it was unstoppable. The design of the 138 is also beautiful in a functional way. The rounded hood, often called the Tatra Smile, wasn't just for style, it provided excellent visibility for the driver and better aerodynamics. These trucks were exported to over 40 countries and became legends in construction and mining. Drivers often claimed that the only thing that could stop a Tatra 138 was running out of fuel. It is a rugged, unstoppable force of nature that proves complex engineering can be incredibly durable. The Tatra 138 was built to conquer continents, but our next vehicle was built for an island nation with very specific rules about size. Welcome to the strange world of Japanese K trucks. In post-war Japan, the government created a tax class for tiny vehicles to get the population mobile. Enter the Aichi machine industry and their masterpiece, the Koni 360 Wide. Don't let the name Wide fool you. There is nothing wide about this truck by American standards. It is so narrow that two large adults sitting inside would be practically hugging. Introduced in the 1960s, the Koni 360 Wide is a masterclass in space efficiency, featuring a cab-over design that pushed the wheels to the absolute corners to maximize the cargo bed length. Underneath the seats lies a tiny air-cooled two-cylinder boxer engine displacing just 354 cc, that is smaller than most modern motorcycles. It produced roughly 18 horsepower, which was just enough to propel the lightweight truck and a payload of about 770 lbs, 350 kg, to a top speed of maybe 50 mph on a good day. Yet this little workhorse was the backbone of Japanese small businesses. It delivered tofu, rice, and electronics through the bustling streets of Tokyo and Osaka, fitting into alleys that no other vehicle could enter. What makes the Koni stand out today is its rarity and its face. The front fascia has a distinct, almost robotic look with low-mounted headlights and a simple metal grille. Unlike its competitors like the Subaru Sambar, the Koni is largely forgotten, which makes finding one today a huge event for collectors. Driving one is a visceral experience. With zero crumple zones, you are sitting right on top of the front wheels, feeling every bump in the road. It's cute, it's terrifying, and it's deeply charming. The Koni used a tiny air-cooled engine to save space, but our next German contender used air cooling for a completely different reason: reliability. If Germany had Mercedes and America had Ford, Spain had Pegaso, and the Pegaso Comet was the truck that put the entire nation on wheels during the economic boom of the 1960s and 70s. Manufactured by NASA, this truck bore the famous flying horse logo, a symbol of power and speed. The Comet wasn't just a vehicle, it was the pride of the Spanish automotive industry. With its boxy cab-over design and the distinctive cross-shaped grille, it dominated the highways from Madrid to Barcelona, becoming the undisputed king of long-haul transport on the Iberian Peninsula. Beneath the cab lay a 6.5-liter inline-six diesel engine pumping out 125 horsepower. That might sound modest today, but back then it was a powerhouse, allowing the truck to reach a top speed of around 60 mph, 95 km/h, while fully loaded. Pegaso was famous for the distinctive roar of its exhaust and its incredible durability. Drivers often tell stories of loading the truck with over 18,000 lbs, 8 tons of cargo, frequently exceeding legal limits, yet the Comet would still climb the steep mountain passes of the Pyrenees without breaking a sweat. Today, the Pegaso Comet is remembered as the truck that built modern Spain. It hauled bricks to build hotels, oranges for export, and the hopes of a growing economy. Although the Pegaso brand was eventually acquired by Iveso, the legacy of the flying horse lives on in the hearts of vintage truck enthusiasts. Seeing a restored Comet rolling down the road is like watching an old gladiator who still has his strength. From the Spanish giant, we return to Italy for another three-wheeled oddity that tried to challenge the dominance of the Piaggio ape. When you think of Italian scooters, you think of two names: Vespa, made by Piaggio, and Lambretta, made by Innocenti. This rivalry didn't stop at scooters, it extended into the world of utility trucks. While Piaggio had the Ape, Innocenti answered with the Lambro series, and the Lambro 550 is arguably the peak of that lineage. Launched in the mid-1960s, this wasn't just a scooter with a box. It was a serious attempt to make a three-wheeled truck that felt like a car, featuring a fully enclosed steel cabin to protect the driver from the elements. However, unlike a car, you still steered it with handlebars. Imagine sitting in a metal box, shifting gears with your hand on the handlebar clutch, and listening to the buzz of a 198cc two-stroke engine right underneath you. It was noisy, it vibrated, and it smelled of oil and gasoline. The 550 in the name referred to its payload capacity class. That's right, this tiny tricycle could carry over 1,200 lobbies, 550 klar of cargo. That is an incredible weight-to-size ratio, essentially allowing it to carry its own weight in bricks or produce. Visually, the Lambro 550 is distinct from the Ape. It has a squarer, more industrial look, often described as utilitarian chic. In Italy, these were the lifeblood of small villages used by bakers, builders, and farmers to navigate tight cobblestone streets. Sadly, when the Innocenti factory closed, the Lambro faded into obscurity faster than the Ape. Finding a working Lambro 550 today is rare. They are mechanical time capsules of an era when Italy was getting back to work, one tiny, smoky load at a time. The Lambro was a lightweight sprinter, but our next truck is a heavyweight marathon runner that carried the economy of the entire Eastern Bloc. If you lived in Eastern Europe during the Cold War, you saw this truck every single day. The Liaz 706 series is not just a vehicle, it is a symbol of socialist transport. While the Model 706 RT was the original legend, the Liaz 706 MT, which stands for Modernized Trambus, took the platform to a new level in the late 1960s. The term strangest referred to its cab-over-engine design, which gave it a flat face resembling a bus or a tram. It was the direct evolution of the famous Skoda trucks and became the standard heavy truck for everything from garbage collection to international long-haul trucking. The Lee's 706 MT was powered by an improved M634 inline-six diesel engine displacing nearly 12 liters. It wasn't fast, topping out at around 45 to 50 mph, 75 km/h, and it certainly wasn't quiet, but it had torque for days. The payload capacity was significant, often rated for around 9 tons on the truck itself, plus a trailer. The design of the cabin was surprisingly spacious for its time, often featuring a sleeper berth for drivers who spent weeks on the road. The most distinct feature was its large, friendly face with big round headlights and a split windshield. It had a soft, bouncing suspension that made the cabin sway like a boat, a feeling many retired truck drivers remember with a mix of nostalgia and motion sickness. These trucks were exported all over the communist world, from Cuba to Vietnam. They were simple machines that you could fix with a hammer and a wrench. While Western trucks were adding electronics and comforts, the Liaz remained a purely mechanical beast. Today, seeing a Liaz 706 MT on the road is a rare treat, a smoking, rumbling reminder of a fallen empire's industrial might. The Liaz was a conventional four-wheeler, but in Japan, Mazda decided that 3 wheels were enough, even for a truck the size of a house. When we say 3-wheel truck, you think of the tiny Piaggio or Lambretta we just discussed. But Mazda had a different idea. They thought, why don't we make a 3-wheeler that is massive? The result was the Mazda T2000, the crowning glory of Japan's obsession with 3-wheeled cargo haulers. This is not a K-truck. It is a legitimate heavy-duty vehicle that is over 20 feet, 6 meters long. Produced from 1962 to 1974, the T2000 looks like a spaceship from a 1950s comic book, with a long, narrow hood leading to a single front wheel and a wide 2-seat cabin behind it. It was the most powerful in its class, being a 2.0-liter, 4-cylinder, water-cooled engine putting out about 80 horsepower. This allowed it to carry a payload of 2 tons, which was impressive for a tricycle. It could reach speeds of up to 60 miles per hour, 100 km/h, which must have been a frightening experience. The main advantage of this bizarre layout was a ridiculously tight turning radius. You could drive this 20-foot giant into a narrow timber yard or a crowded construction site, spin it around on a dime thanks to that single front wheel, and drive right out. The T2000 was widely used in construction and logging, earning a reputation for toughness. However, driving it required skill. If you took a corner too fast while empty, the stability was exciting, to say the least. As Japan's highways improved and speeds increased, the unstable 3-wheelers fell out of favor and were replaced by conventional trucks. Today, the Mazda T2000 is a highly coveted collector's item. It represents the pinnacle of a unique evolutionary branch of the automotive tree that simply stopped growing. The Mazda T2000 looks like science fiction, but our next truck looks like it drove straight out of a history book from the 1930s. The Praga RN is a time traveler. First introduced in 1933 in Czechoslovakia, This truck was so good, so reliable, and so essential that it remained in production for nearly 20 years, surviving World War II and the communist takeover. The RN stands for Rýchly náklad, which translates to fast cargo. By modern standards, it wasn't fast, topping out at roughly 50 mi. Be 80 km/h, but in the 1930s that was a marvel of performance. The design is pure classic elegance with a long square hood, separate flowing fenders, and large headlamps mounted on a chrome bar. Under the hood lay a 3.5-liter six-cylinder gasoline engine producing about 70 horsepower. It was a thirsty engine, but it was incredibly simple to maintain. During the war, it served as a military transport, an ambulance, and a supply truck. After the war, it rebuilt the country. It was the fire truck that saved villages, the bus that took workers to factories, and the delivery truck that brought food to cities. The payload was rated at around 3 tons, making it a versatile medium-duty truck that could go anywhere. What makes the Praga RN special is its simplicity. It was built before planned obsolescence existed. The parts were heavy, over-engineered, and designed to be repaired indefinitely. Drivers had to double-clutch every gear shift and wrestle the non-assisted steering wheel, but they trusted the Praga with their lives. Seeing one today at a vintage show is like looking at a rolling monument to the resilience of the mid-20th century. The Praga was a Czech legend, but for our final entry, we have to talk about the truck that motorized the entire Soviet Union. We end our list with the most produced truck in the history of the Soviet Union, the GAZ-51. If you look at old footage of Russia, China, or North Korea from the 1950s and 60s, 90% of the trucks you see are GAZ-51s. Over 3.4 million of these units were built. It was the Ford F-150 of the communist world, everywhere, doing everything. The design was heavily influenced by the American Studebaker US6 truck sent to Russia during World War II, but Soviet engineers adapted it for even harsher conditions and lower quality fuel. It featured a simple 3.5-liter inline-six engine producing 70 horsepower, giving it a modest top speed of around 45 mph, 70 km/h. Early models even had wooden cabins to save steel, though later versions were all metal. With a payload of 2.5 tons, it wasn't a giant, but it was tough. It wasn't comfortable, and the suspension was stiff, but it was virtually unstoppable in mud and snow thanks to its high ground clearance and robust drivetrain. It taught millions of people how to drive and how to fix an engine with basic tools. The GAZ-51 is fascinating because it is the ancestor of modern trucking in half the world. It was exported to Poland as the Lublin 51, to North Korea as the Sungri 58, and to China as the Uajian NJ130. It is a vehicle that lacks the glamour of the Scamel or the quirkiness of the Mazda, but its sheer impact on human history is undeniable. It is the humble hero of the working class that literally built nations. Our journey discovering history's 10 most bizarre and unique vintage trucks ends here. From the unbelievable power of the Tatra to the adorable tininess of the Pentaro, engineers of the past were truly unafraid of the craziest challenges. Which machine impressed you the most? Leave a comment below. If you found this video interesting, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to join us in exploring more mechanical legends. Thank you for riding along, and see you in the next video. Forget everything you know about trucks. You think they are just boring tools with four wheels and a bed. You are dead wrong. We are about to uncover the true freaks of automotive history. Imagine a truck made entirely of wood and leather. Picture a massive beast with an engine that screams but has absolutely no radiator. Or a three-wheeled nightmare that threatens to flip over if you turn the steering wheel too fast. These aren't sci-fi movies. This is history. Which one is a genius invention and which one is a death trap? You have to watch until number 1 to believe your eyes. Smash that subscribe button right now because we are going full throttle into the 10 weirdest trucks ever made. Let's kick things off with something that looks less like a truck and more like a motorcycle having an identity crisis. This is the Tempo Handseat. Originating in Germany right after the war, this three-wheeled oddity was the definition of desperate innovation to get the economy moving again. The most striking feature is undeniably that single front wheel. But look closer at the mechanics. The engine isn't under the seat or in the back. The entire powertrain, a tiny 400cc two-stroke motor producing just 15 horsepower, is mounted directly on top of the front fork. It looks incredibly fragile, yet it was the workhorse for thousands of businesses. Driving a Handseat was a physical workout and a chaotic lesson in physics. Because the vibrating engine sat heavily on the front wheel, when you turned the steering wheel, you were physically swinging the entire engine assembly left or right. And here is the scary part. The center of gravity was frighteningly high. If you took a corner too fast while the cargo bed was empty, the truck would literally try to somersault. It was notorious for tipping over on sharp turns, yet it offered a top speed of around 30 miles per hour, which was terrifyingly fast for a tricycle loaded with bricks or produce. Despite its comical appearance and the constant threat of rolling over, the Tempo Handseat was so simple and cheap that it became a legend. While Germany eventually moved on to four wheels, the tooling for this truck was sold to India, where it evolved into the Bajaj auto rickshaws. So, in a way, this weird German tricycle never really died. It just emigrated. But if you think driving a three-wheeler is scary, wait until you see our next entry. We are moving from three wheels to four, with a truck from East Germany that smoked like a chimney and ran on a mixture of oil and hope. Crossing the Iron Curtain into East Germany, we find the Framo V901. While the US was building massive V8 pickups, the engineers in the GDR were working with severe limitations. The Framo V901 is a fascinating study in communist minimalism. Produced in the 1950s, it looks somewhat charming today with its classic curves and separate headlights. However, make no mistake, this was a bare-bones utility vehicle designed for a world where steel and fuel were scarce. It served as everything from a delivery van to a minibus and even an ambulance, proving that necessity is indeed the mother of invention. Under the hood sat a minuscule 900cc three-cylinder two-stroke engine. Yes, a two-stroke truck engine. That meant every time you fired it up, you were greeted with the distinctive ring-ding-ding sound and a thick cloud of blue smoke. It produced roughly 24 to 28 horsepower. To put that in perspective, most modern riding lawnmowers have more kick than this truck. It struggled to reach 50 miles per hour, and if you were hauling a heavy load of coal uphill, you could probably walk faster alongside it. The cabin was noisy, hot, and smelled permanently of burnt oil. Despite its lack of power, the V901 has gained a cult following today among vintage enthusiasts. It represents a time when mechanics were simple enough that you could fix your engine with a hammer and a wrench on the side of the road. It's a cute, smoky piece of history that paved the way for the Barcus van, but we are done with small and cute. Let's jump from the tiny 900cc Framo to a French monster that was built to move mountains, featuring an engine so big it could power a small ship. They say everything is bigger in Texas, but clearly they never saw the French-made Willem TG200. This wasn't just a truck, it was a land train. Produced by Willem, a company famous for heavy-duty haulers, the TG200 was the undisputed king of the road in the 1960s. The TG stood for Tracteur Géant, giant tractor, and it lived up to the name. This 8A4 beast was designed specifically for convoy exceptionnel, or exceptional convoys, tasked with hauling super heavy loads like electrical transformers and locomotive parts across the country. Just look at the scale of this thing. The truck itself weighed over 40 tons without a load. Under that massive locomotive-like hood, it was often powered by a Detroit diesel V16 engine or a massive Cummins power plant, generating the immense torque needed to pull loads exceeding 200 tons. The design is unforgettable, a flat, imposing vertical face with a windshield that seems to look down on everything else on the road. The sheer number of tires needed to distribute the weight of the loads it carried is mind-boggling, turning the asphalt into a mere suggestion of a road. Driving this Leviathan required incredible skill. There was limited power steering assist compared to today. It was pure muscle and mechanical leverage. The Willem TG200 remains a symbol of industrial might, a dinosaur from an era before modular, self-propelled trailers took over the heavy lifting. It is a machine of pure brute force that commands respect. Speaking of unique engines, our next truck didn't just have a big engine. It had an engine that didn't need a single drop of water to stay cool, screaming down the highway with a sound you will never forget. If you were in Europe in the 1960s and heard a loud screaming roar coming down the road, it was probably a Majeres Deutz Rundhauber. The nickname Rundhauber translates to round hood, referring to that distinctively curved alligator-style nose that gave it a friendly yet tough appearance. But the real magic wasn't the shape, it was the engineering philosophy. While the rest of the world was fussing with radiators, water pumps, hoses, and coolant leaks, Majeres Deutz simply said, "Why bother?" and removed the cooling system entirely. These trucks were powered by legendary air-cooled diesel engines, available in V8 or even V12 configurations. That's right, no water. They used massive high-speed fans to blast air directly over the finned cylinders to keep them cool. This made them incredibly reliable in extreme climates, whether it was the freezing cold of the Alps where water would freeze, or the scorching heat of the Sahara where water would boil. The Majeres didn't care. As long as there was air, it would run. The sound is iconic, a distinct high-pitched clatter that is music to the ears of truck enthusiasts. The Rundhauber was tough as nails, becoming the preferred choice for fire trucks and construction vehicles across the globe. The rounded hood wasn't just for style, it allowed for better visibility on rough terrain compared to the square noses of the competition. It represents German engineering at its most pragmatic. From the noisy construction sites of Germany, let's travel to the quiet, majestic wilderness of America for a vehicle that is as yellow as the sun and holds a special place in U.S. history. This next entry is a Hollywood star. You might recognize the white 706 as the Jammer buses from Yellowstone National Park. Built by the White Motor Company in the late 1930s, these vehicles are perhaps the most beautiful fusion of a rugged truck chassis and a passenger coach ever created. They were designed specifically for the National Park Service to transport tourists in style through the American wilderness. Painted a bright, distinctive yellow, they were made to stand out against the greenery of the forests, becoming an icon of the park experience. The most distinct feature is the canvas rollback top. In an era before panoramic glass roofs, this was high-tech luxury. The driver could roll the canvas roof back, allowing passengers to gaze up at the towering peaks of the Tetons or the geysers of Yellowstone without obstruction. Powered by a reliable inline-six engine, they weren't fast, climbing steep mountain passes at maybe 25 to 30 miles per hour, but speed wasn't the point. The point was the view. Passengers sat on leather bench seats, experiencing the park with the wind in their hair and the smell of pine trees filling the cabin. But why are they called jammers? It's because of the non-synchronized manual transmissions. The drivers had to double clutch and often jam the gears to get them to shift on the steep mountain grades, creating a distinct grinding sound. These buses are built on the rugged white model 706 truck chassis, giving them the durability to handle rough park roads for nearly a century. But while the white 706 had a classic long nose, Truck designers were starting to realize that sometimes the best place for the driver is right on top of the engine. Before the flat-faced trucks we see today dominated the highways, there was a transition period, and the Kenworth Bullnose is the king of that era. Produced in the early 1950s, this was Kenworth's cab-over-engine, COE design, but it didn't look like a brick wall. It had style. The front end was rounded, featuring a distinctive bubble shape that earned it the Bullnose nickname. This truck represents the golden age of American trucking, where design flair met industrial utility on the newly formed interstate system. Due to strict length regulations on highways back then, manufacturers had to squash the cabin to maximize trailer space. Kenworth did it with elegance, often packing a Cummins diesel engine producing over 200 horsepower inside. However, the driver paid the price. The engine was literally inside the cab with you, covered by a large metal doghouse between the seats. It was hot, noisy, and cramped. If you wanted to check the oil, you had to disassemble parts of the interior. There was no tilting mechanism for the cab yet. Despite the maintenance nightmare, the Bullnose was the chariot of the American road warrior. Seeing a restored Bullnose today is a rare treat, capturing the romance of the open road before aerodynamics turned everything into a wedge. It commands high prices at auctions and is beloved for its Art Deco curves. But the problem of accessing the engine in these flat-front trucks was a genuine nightmare for mechanics, until our next contender invented a sci-fi solution that changed trucking forever. The White Motor Company strikes again, but this time with something that looked like it drove straight out of a 1950s sci-fi comic. This is the White 3000. At first glance, it looks like a futuristic low-slung pug. The cabin sits incredibly low to the ground, ahead of the front wheels, giving the driver a panoramic view of the road that was unmatched at the time. It was marketed for inner-city deliveries because you could spot pedestrians right in front of the bumper. It usually ran on a Mustang 6-cylinder gas engine, perfect for city hauling. But the real party trick of the White 3000 was the power lift cab. Remember how hard it was to work on the Kenworth Bullnose? Well, White solved it. With the turn of a key, an electric actuator would tilt the entire cabin forward, exposing the engine completely. This was revolutionary. Mechanics loved it. No more crawling through grease or taking apart the dashboard. The truck literally bowed down to you. It was the first time this technology was successfully mass-produced, setting the standard for modern cab-over trucks. The White 3000 became a favorite for beer trucks, garbage trucks, and fuel tankers across America. Its futuristic, rounded Art Deco styling makes it one of the most collectible vintage trucks today. It proved that a work truck could be smart, ergonomic, and incredibly cool-looking. From hauling beer and trash in the city, let's move to a truck that hauled something much sweeter and came with a sound every kid in California knew by heart. If you grew up in Southern California between the 1930s and the 1960s, this vehicle brings tears of nostalgia to your eyes. The Helms Bakery truck wasn't just a vehicle, it was a rolling institution. Whether built on a twin coach or the iconic Divco chassis, these trucks were painted in a creamy ivory color and did not sell their goods in stores. They came to you. They were the Uber Eats of the mid-20th century, but with way more class and fresh donuts. The truck was custom designed for one purpose: selling donuts, bread, and cookies door to door. The driver, known as the helmsman, would blow a distinctive whistle, toot toot, that signaled the neighborhood kids to come running. But the engineering quirk here was the storage. The back wasn't just an empty cargo hold. It was lined with beautiful custom wooden drawers filled with fresh pastries. These were stand-drive vans, allowing the driver to easily jump in and out hundreds of times a day while driving at low neighborhood speeds. Mechanically, they were simple, reliable, and not built for speed, rarely exceeding 40 miles per hour. But culturally, they were a heavyweight. They represent a lost era of personalized service where the bakery came to your curb. The smell of fresh bread wafting from these trucks is a core memory for millions of Americans. The Helms truck was all about clever storage, but our next van reinvented the entire architecture of the automobile. predicting the future of the minivan decades early. You might think the minivan was invented in the 1980s by Chrysler, but you'd be wrong. Meet the grandfather of the modern minivan, the DKW Schnellester, or Rapid Transporter. Post-war Germany needed a utility vehicle, and DKW delivered something radically advanced. While everyone else was using rear-wheel drive with a long drive shaft running under the floor, DKW put the engine and the drive wheels at the very front. This was a front-wheel drive van in 1949, an absolute rarity. Why does that matter? Because it allowed the rear floor to be completely flat and incredibly low, just 16 inches off the ground. You could load cargo almost directly from the curb without lifting it high. It was a packaging miracle. Later versions were powered by a 3-cylinder 2-stroke engine producing around 42 horsepower. It wasn't fast, topping out at roughly 60 miles per hour, but the layout was pure genius. The wheels were pushed to the absolute corners of the vehicle, maximizing interior space. The Schnellester looked like a loaf of bread on wheels, with a short, stubby hood and a wide stance. It was weird, yes, but it predicted the future of cargo vans. Every modern front-wheel drive delivery van owes a debt to this little German oddball. It showed that moving the mechanical bits out of the way creates more room for business. But if you think metal is the only way to build a car, you're in for a shock with our number 1 pick, which used materials usually reserved for furniture. And finally, at number 1, we have the van that proves size isn't everything. Meet the Lloyd LT600. This van comes from a brand with one of the weirdest nicknames in history, the Leukoplast Bomber or Band-Aid Bomber. Why? Because the earlier cars from Lloyd were literally made of wood frames covered in fabric vinyl due to steel shortages. While this LT600 model eventually upgraded to a steel body, it never lost its toy-like soul and lightweight construction. It is impossibly small. It looks less like a truck and more like a shrunken 1950s wagon. Under the hood, it was powered by a tiny 600cc air-cooled 2-cylinder engine producing a whopping 19 horsepower. Yes, 19 horsepower. It weighed only about 1/400 lbs. It was slow, barely reaching 50 miles per hour downhill, and it had suicide doors that opened backward. Yet, for many small businesses in Europe, this was their workhorse, a step up from a bicycle but cheaper than a real truck. The LT600 is the ultimate example of micro-trucking. It bridged the gap between a motorcycle and a real van. Today, seeing one next to a modern Ford Transit is hilarious. It looks like it could fit inside the cargo hold of a modern truck. It is bizarre, it is rare, and it is undoubtedly the weirdest, bravest little truck on our list. It reminds us that sometimes the strangest solutions are the ones that get the job done when times are tough. From the massive land trains of France to the tiny wooden vans of Germany, we have seen that the history of trucking is anything but boring. These mechanical oddities remind us that innovation often starts with a strange idea. Now, I have a challenge for you. Which of these trucks would you trust to survive a cross-country road trip today? Drop your choice in the comments below. If you enjoyed this ride through automotive history, please smash that like button and subscribe for more deep dives. Thanks for watching, and see you next time. Have you ever seen a truck that looks like a giant metal toaster, or a Soviet monster that literally eats gasoline for breakfast? Welcome to the world of old-school trucking, where safety was optional and drivers were made of steel. We are not talking about your modern, comfortable Volvos or Peterbilts. We are diving deep into the history books to find the 10 most bizarre, rugged, and downright strange trucks that you won't believe actually existed. From the frozen highways of Siberia to the sun-drenched roads of 1960s America, these machines built nations. Which one is the weirdest? Is it the cracker box that shook drivers to their bones, or the one-axle alien from the USSR? Stick around, because number 9 will absolutely blow your mind. Hit that subscribe button, buckle up, and let's roll. Let's start with a legend that changed the face of Soviet transport forever, the KAMAZ 5320. Before this truck arrived in 1976, Soviet drivers were used to long-nosed bonneted trucks that offered zero visibility. The Kamaz 5320 was a revolution, a cab-over-engine design that looked modern, almost European. It was the new kid on the block, powered by a roaring V8 diesel engine. It wasn't just a truck, it was a symbol of industrial pride, built in the world's largest truck factory at the time. Drivers finally had a sleeper cab, which was a luxury in the USSR, allowing them to travel vast distances across the continent comfortably. Under the cabin, the Kamaz 5320 featured a powerful 10.85-liter YAMZ 740 V8 diesel engine, producing 210 horsepower. This 6x4 configuration truck could haul a payload of roughly 17,000 pounds, with a gross combination weight reaching over 57,000 pounds when pulling a trailer. While its top speed was limited to about 53 miles per hour, its torque was impressive. The transmission was a 10-speed manual with a splitter, giving drivers plenty of gears to conquer the Russian terrain. It consumed fuel at a rate of roughly 7 miles per gallon, which was considered efficient for a heavy-duty Soviet truck of that era. Despite its reliability compared to its predecessors, it was still a vibration machine. The cabin insulation was practically non-existent in the early models, meaning you felt every single explosion in that V8 engine right under your seat. But for the Soviet trucker, this was the Cadillac of heavy haulers. It laid the foundation for the Kamaz trucks that dominate the Dakar Rally today. Owning the road in a Kamaz wasn't a walk in the park. If it broke down in the middle of nowhere, you could fix it with a sledgehammer. While the Kamaz was a step towards modernity, our next truck is the absolute face of the Soviet working class. If you close your eyes and picture a Soviet truck, you are probably picturing the ZIL 130. Produced for over 30 years starting in the early 60s, this truck is instantly recognizable by its panoramic windshield and that signature baby blue and white paint job. Why blue? Because the USSR had an abundance of that specific paint. It was the universal soldier of the East, serving as a dump truck, a fire engine, a garbage truck, and a farm hauler. Designed to be driven by anyone from an 18-year-old conscript to a seasoned veteran, it represents an era where efficiency didn't matter, but extreme durability was everything. Here is the bizarre fact regarding its specifications. While the rest of the world was switching to diesel, the ZIL 130 was powered by a 6.0-liter V8 gasoline engine. Yes, it ran on gas. This hungry beast produced about 150 horsepower and consumed fuel at an alarming rate of roughly 5 to 6 miles per gallon. It had a 5-speed manual transmission with synchronized gears on the higher ratios, which was quite advanced for Soviet trucks. With a payload capacity of roughly 13,000 pounds, it was a medium-duty workhorse that could reach a top speed of 56 miles per hour on a good day. The real charm of the ZIL is its face. The rounded fenders and the slotted grille give it a friendly, almost cartoonish appearance. Don't let the cute look fool you. This truck was indestructible. You can still find them running today in remote villages, held together by wire and hope. The power steering was famously light, leading to a wandering feeling on the highway, forcing drivers to constantly correct the wheel. The ZIL was friendly and round, but our next contender is the complete opposite, a terrifying iron monster that eats rough terrain for breakfast and spits out black smoke. Meet the Kraz 256, often called the Cannibal or the Iron Monster, by the brave souls who drove it. This isn't just a truck. It's a quarry dump truck built without a single compromise for comfort. Manufactured in Ukraine, the Kraz 256 featured a cabin frame made of wood sheathed in sheet metal, simple, brutal, and cheap to repair. It was designed for the harshest conditions on Earth, from the Siberian tundra to the scorching deserts of Central Asia. The noise inside the cabin was so deafening that drivers often wore industrial ear protection or simply accepted hearing loss as a job hazard. This monster was powered by a massive 14.86-liter YAMZ 238 V8 diesel engine without a turbocharger. It churned out 240 horsepower and a massive amount of torque at low RPMs. The truck itself weighed over 24,000 pounds empty and could carry a payload of 26,000 pounds through deep mud. It had a 5-speed gearbox with a transfer case, giving it exceptional off-road capabilities. Top speed was officially listed at 38 miles per hour, but you would never want to go that fast. At full speed, the vibration was enough to loosen your teeth. Driving a Kraz was a physical workout. The steering wheel was enormous, and while it had pneumatic power steering, the system was often overwhelmed by the sheer weight of the front axle in deep mud. The suspension was so stiff that drivers joked they could tell if they ran over a coin, but its off-road capability was legendary. It didn't care about cold, heat, or maintenance schedules. From a massive Ukrainian giant, we traveled to Czechoslovakia to meet a tiny, quirky truck that looks like it belongs in a French bakery but has a confusing accent. Now for something completely different. The Avia A30 might look like a toy compared to the Kraz, but it's an icon of Eastern Europe. Produced in Czechoslovakia, this truck actually has French DNA. It was built under license from Savium, specifically the Savium SG models, which explains why it looks so stylish and distinct compared to the rugged Russian trucks. With its large glass cabin, thin pillars, and steering column gear shifter, it offered excellent visibility and maneuverability. It was the delivery truck of choice for milk, mail, and furniture, navigating the narrow cobblestone streets of old European cities. Under the hood, or rather under the seat, was a 3.6-liter four-cylinder diesel engine designated the Avia 712. It produced a modest 80 horsepower. While not a speed demon, it was sufficient for urban duties, carrying a payload of roughly 6,600 pounds. The top speed was around 50 miles per hour, but reaching that speed took patience. The engine was known for being cold-blooded. Starting an Avia in the freezing winter often involved blowtorches and prayers. The electrical system was also notoriously temperamental, often possessed by what drivers called French ghosts. The bizarre part of the Avia was its driving position. You sat right on top of the front wheels with your nose almost touching the windshield. In a frontal collision, your knees were the crumple zone. Despite its French origins, the Avia developed a reputation for being quirky but beloved. Its distinct blue color and aircraft-style logo, since Avia started as an aircraft manufacturer, made it a nostalgic part of history. Leaving Czechoslovakia, we head south to Spain to meet a truck named after an Arrow, built by a company that started with engines for fishing boats. In the 1960s, Spain was isolated from much of the automotive world, leading to the rise of unique domestic brands. Enter the Barreros Saeta. Eduardo Barreros, a brilliant mechanic, started by converting gasoline engines to diesel, eventually building his own empire to rival the state-owned Pegaso. The Saeta, which translates to arrow, was his masterpiece in the medium-duty range. These trucks were famous for one thing: being overloaded to an impossible degree. Spanish truckers in the 60s and 70s would stack cargo twice the height of the cabin, pushing the Saeta up steep mountain passes in the scorching heat. The Saeta 65 model was typically powered by a Barreros EB6 diesel engine, a reliable six-cylinder unit producing around 90 horsepower. Later models saw upgrades to more powerful engines as the demands increased. It had a 5-speed manual transmission and was rated for a gross vehicle weight of roughly 26,000 pounds, though in practice it carried much more. The top speed hovered around 55 miles per hour, but with a full load on a hill, it would crawl at a walking pace. The engine was a gem, tough, torquey, and surprisingly fuel-efficient for the abuse it took. What makes the Barreros story bizarre is the corporate drama behind it. Barreros eventually partnered with Chrysler, leading to a strange mix of American Dodge designs with Spanish diesel engines. The Saeta represents the golden age of Spanish trucking, a symbol of a self-made industrialist fighting against the odds. It wasn't the prettiest truck. The cabin was boxy, simple, and utilitarian, but it built modern Spain. Spain had another trick up its sleeve. A truck with a face so flat it looked like it ran into a wall at the factory and never recovered. If you think the Barreros look tough, the Ebro B45 looks like a pug. Manufactured by Motor Iberica, the Ebro B45 was actually based on the British Ford Thames Trader, but the Spanish version took on a life of its own. It features a forward control design where the engine sits halfway into the cabin, creating a massive hump between the driver and the passenger. The grille is flat, vertical, and dominates the entire front end, giving it a very distinct, almost surprised expression. The Ebro name comes from the Ebro River, evoking national pride similar to the Ford Thames in the UK. The Ebro B45 was powered by a four-cylinder diesel engine producing approximately 70 horsepower. It was a light to medium duty truck designed for short hauls and urban distribution. The payload capacity was around 9,000 pounds. Its top speed was limited to roughly 45 miles per hour, making it a slow-moving obstacle on open roads. The ergonomics were a disaster. The gear lever was awkward to reach, the pedals were heavy, and the noise insulation was purely theoretical. However, like its British cousin, it was incredibly simple to maintain, allowing it to survive for decades. Seeing a B45 today is a rare treat. Its peculiar proportions, short wheelbase, tall cabin, and flat face make it look like a cartoon truck come to life. It's a reminder of a time when trucks were designed with a ruler and no curves. It served faithfully in the dusty towns of Spain, carrying everything from wine barrels to construction materials. Now let's cross the Atlantic to the USA. While Europe was building small workhorses, America was building aluminum boxes that were fast, dangerous, and absolutely legendary on the interstate. Welcome to 1960s America. The highways are expanding and speed is king. Enter the GMC DLR 8000, affectionately and fearfully known as the Cracker Box. Why? Because the cabin was literally a square box made of aluminum sheets riveted together. It looked like a cereal box on wheels. GMC designed this truck to maximize cargo length within the strict 50-foot bumper-to-bumper laws of the time. By making the cab only 48 inches deep, they could haul longer trailers. But this design came at a cost. Safety was non-existent, and a piece of plywood offered more protection than the front of this truck. Despite its fragile appearance, the Cracker Box was a powerhouse. It was equipped with the legendary Detroit Diesel 671 or the massive 8V71 engines, screaming out anywhere from 230 to 300 horsepower. These Jimmy engines were known for their distinct noise, a high-pitched scream that drivers either loved or hated. The truck could easily hit highway speeds of 70 miles per hour or more, dangerously fast for a vehicle with such a short wheelbase. It featured air suspension, which was new at the time, but the ride was still harsh due to the driver sitting directly over the front axle. The Cracker Box is a cult classic today, a symbol of the raw, unregulated era of American trucking where profit and speed mattered more than driver comfort. In winter, the uninsulated cab was a freezer. In summer, it was an oven. It shook drivers to their bones, but it got the job done quickly. It represents a specific moment in time that will never be repeated due to safety regulations. The Cracker Box was a box on wheels, but our next American legend was known as the King of the Road, a high-rise giant that commanded respect. If the GMC was a Cracker Box, the International Harvester DCO 405, nicknamed the Emeryville, was a skyscraper. Built in Emeryville, California, this truck was designed to conquer the West Coast and became the best-selling heavy-duty truck in America for years. It was a high-tilt cab over, meaning the driver sat incredibly high up, looking down on everyone else. This earned it the nickname Highbinder. The Emeryville was built like a tank compared to the GMC, heavier, more robust, and designed to handle the grueling climbs of the Rocky Mountains without breaking a sweat. Under the towering cabin, the Emeryville offered a range of engines, but the most popular were the Cummins diesels, putting out up to 335 horsepower in later models. This power allowed it to haul gross combination weights of up to 73,000 pounds legally, and often much more. It featured complex transmission setups, often with twin sticks, a main box and an auxiliary box requiring skill to shift. Top speed was geared for the open road, easily cruising at 65 to 70 miles per hour. It was a serious machine for serious truckers who spent weeks on the road. What makes it bizarre is its proportions. The cab looks almost too tall for its width, appearing top-heavy and imposing. It had a split windshield and distinctive headlights that gave it a serious, frowning face. The interior was Spartan, the doghouse engine cover was huge, and getting in involved climbing a vertical ladder that felt like scaling a mountain. The Emeryville is the icon of the golden age of trucking songs and culture. We've seen boxes and skyscrapers, but nothing, and I mean nothing, can prepare you for this next machine. It is a one-axle freak of nature. This is it, the weirdest vehicle on our list, the Mazda 546P. At first glance, your brain refuses to accept what it is seeing. Is it a truck? Is it a tractor? It is a single-axle prime mover manufactured in the Soviet Union. That's right, it only has two wheels. It was designed to pull massive earth-moving scrapers. The cabin hangs off to the side and the engine sits in the middle, balancing on that single axle. It can't even stand up on its own without the trailer attached. It looks like something from a sci-fi movie about colonizing Mars. The engineering logic was unique. A single axle provided maximum traction for the heavy weight of the engine, allowing it to pull incredible loads through soft dirt. It was powered by a YAMZ 238 V8 diesel engine producing 215 horsepower. The vehicle weighed roughly 22,000 pounds and could pull a scraper loaded with tons of earth. Its top speed was slow, only around 25 miles per hour, but speed wasn't the point. The steering worked by hydraulically bending the joint between the tractor and the trailer, known as articulated steering. Driving the Mazda was a nightmare. It pitched back and forth like a boat in a storm due to the single axle pivot point. The driver was subjected to a roller coaster ride all day long. It was loud, it smoked, and it looked completely alien. The Mazda was used in major construction projects across the USSR, building dams and canals. Visually, it is a 10 out of 10 on the weird scale. From the wildest design imaginable, we end with the most humble, common, and arguably most important truck in Soviet history. After the madness of the Mazda, we return to the ground with the GAZ-53. This isn't a monster, it's a friend. The GAZ-53 is the most produced truck in Soviet history, with over 4 million units built between 1961 and 1993. If the ZIL 130 was the heavy lifter, the GAZ-53 was the daily runner. It looks simple because it is. A V8 engine, a wooden or steel bed, and a face that looks like it's smiling. It built the rural Soviet Union, carrying the harvest, the mail, the school children, and the livestock. Under the hood sits a 4.2 5-liter V8 gasoline engine made of aluminum alloy, producing 115 horsepower. Like the ZIL, it ran on gas, not diesel. It had a payload capacity of roughly 7,700 pounds, or 3.5 metric tons. The top speed was around 56 miles per hour. It was lightweight and had a suspension soft enough to not break eggs on a farm road, but tough enough to cross plowed fields. The V8 engine gave it a distinct burbling sound, similar to an American muscle car but much, much slower. Why is it on this list? Because of its sheer ubiquity and simplicity. It had no seatbelts, no radio, and the dashboard was just painted metal. Yet it refused to die. You can fix a GAZ-53 with a piece of wire and some duct tape. It represents the soul of the old-school truck, a machine that asks for nothing and gives everything. It's the perfect ending to our list of legends. These trucks remind us that before computers took over, driving was an act of mechanical partnership between man and machine. From the death trap aluminum boxes of America to the single-axle aliens of the USSR, these 10 trucks prove that the past was a wild place for engineering. They were loud, uncomfortable, and dangerous, but they had a mechanical soul that modern plastic trucks just can't match. Which one was your favorite? Would you dare to drive the Iron Monster? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like if you learned something new and subscribe for more deep dives into mechanical legends. Thanks for watching and keep on trucking. Have you ever seen a truck shaped like a giant hot dog speeding down the highway? Or a military beast so thirsty it consumes fuel faster than you can pour it? Welcome to the wild side of automotive history. Today we are not looking at your average pickup trucks like the Ford F-150. We are diving into the strange, the legendary, and the absolutely bizarre. From the frozen wastelands of the Soviet Union to the sunny streets of America, we have hunted down 10 classic trucks that defy explanation. Some were built to save nations, while others were just crazy experiments gone wrong. Buckle up, because you won't believe these machines actually exist. We begin our journey with a true war hero, a machine that proves engineering knows no borders, the Studebaker US6. While the name sounds as American as apple pie, this truck became an absolute legend on the other side of the world, in the Soviet Union. Produced between 1941 and 1945 by the Studebaker Corporation in Indiana, this 6x6 behemoth was designed to conquer the toughest terrains imaginable. While the U.S. Army preferred other trucks, the US6 became the backbone of the Red Army during World War II, proving that sometimes a product finds its true home far away from where it was born. What made the US6 so special was its rugged simplicity. It was powered by the Hercules JXD 6-cylinder gasoline engine, producing roughly 95 horsepower. That might not sound like much today, but combined with its robust transmission and a payload capacity of 5,000 pounds off-road, it was unstoppable. The Soviets loved it because, unlike their domestic trucks at the time, the Studebaker was reliable and could handle the brutal Russian winter without freezing up. It featured a distinctively tough design with metal grills and a high stance, allowing it to wade through deep mud and snow that would trap lesser vehicles. However, the most iconic role of this truck was serving as the primary platform for the terrifying Katyusha rocket launchers. When you see historical footage of rockets firing into the German lines, creating a deafening noise that terrified enemy troops, they are likely launching from the back of an American Studebaker. Over 200,000 of these were sent to the USSR under the Lend-Lease program. It is a strange twist of history that an American truck became the symbol of Soviet military might. The US-6 was tough, simple, and rugged, a perfect start to our list of legends. If the Studebaker was the hero of the war, the Ural 375D was the monster of the Cold War. Entering production in 1961, this Soviet general-purpose truck was designed with one goal: to go where no roads existed. The Ural 375D is a 6x6 off-road beast that looks like it could smash through a brick wall without a scratch. With a curb weight of over 18,000 pounds, it is a massive piece of iron. Its aggressive, boxy nose and high ground clearance make it instantly recognizable as a symbol of Soviet heavy industry and military might. The heart of this giant is a massive 7.0-liter V8 gasoline engine, the ZIL 375, and this is where things get crazy. This engine was derived from a luxury limousine design, meaning it required high-octane fuel, a rarity in the military. But its biggest problem is its legendary thirst. This truck is one of the least fuel-efficient vehicles ever made. In rough terrain, consumption could reach nearly 2.5 miles per gallon. That means for every 100 miles you drive, you burn through roughly 40 gallons of fuel. It is an environmental nightmare, but a mechanical marvel of raw power. Despite its drinking problem, the Ural 375D was an off-road genius. It featured a central tire inflation system, allowing the driver to adjust tire pressure from inside the cabin to float over sand, swamp, or deep snow. It was used for everything from transporting troops to carrying the BM-21 Grad multiple rocket launcher system. The distinctive roar of its V8 engine could be heard from miles away. While it has largely been replaced by diesel versions today, the original gasoline-powered Ural remains a legend for its ability to traverse terrain that would stop a modern tank. Leaving the Soviet giants behind, we travel to East Germany to meet a true icon of the socialist era, the IFA W50. Built in the city of Ludwigsfelde, this truck wasn't just a vehicle, it was the backbone of an entire nation's economy. The W stands for Werdau, where it was designed, and 50 represents its payload capacity of 5 metric tons or about 11,000 pounds. Production started in 1965 and ran for an incredible 25 years. If you lived in the Eastern Bloc between the 60s and the 80s, you saw this truck every single day. The IFA W50 was powered by a 6.56-liter four-cylinder diesel engine. It wasn't built for speed, topping out at around 50 miles per hour, but it was built to last forever. Its design is instantly recognizable with its cab-over-engine layout and a friendly wide grille that gives it a distinct face. The engineering was focused on simplicity. You could practically repair it with a hammer and a basic wrench, which made it incredibly popular in developing countries. It was a massive export success, sold to nations across Africa, the Middle East, and Asia, including Vietnam. What truly made the W50 special was its versatility. It had over 60 different variants straight from the factory. It served as a dump truck, a fire engine, a military troop carrier, a crane, and even a furniture van with an extended cabin. Some versions were equipped with balloon tires for agriculture, while others had all-wheel drive for military use. While it lacked the comfort and electronics of Western trucks, the IFA W50 represents pure utilitarian engineering at its finest. It was a truck that built nations, one load at a time. Welcome to Hungary. In the 1960s, the Hungarian People's Army needed a new off-road truck, and the Csepel Works delivered the D344. At first glance, it looks like a standard vintage military truck, perhaps a bit charming with its rounded hood. But if you look underneath the chassis, you will find a drivetrain layout that is completely unique in the world of trucks. Most 4x4 trucks use a central drive shaft to send power to a differential in the middle of the front axle. But Csepel engineers had a different idea. To keep the truck's profile low and stable, the engineers couldn't put a bulky differential directly under the engine. Their solution was a complex transfer case that sent power to the front wheels via two separate propeller shafts, one for the left wheel and one for the right. This intricate mechanical ballet allowed the engine to sit lower, giving the truck a much lower center of gravity than its competitors. It was powered by a 5.5-liter four-cylinder diesel engine producing roughly 100 horsepower. It wasn't a powerhouse, but it was smart. Despite its modest power and a top speed of only about 50 miles per hour, the D344 was surprisingly agile on mountain roads thanks to its clever weight distribution. It served faithfully for decades, towing artillery and carrying supplies across difficult terrain. While the dual-shaft system was complicated to maintain, It proved that Hungarian engineers were willing to think outside the box. Today, collectors love it for its quirks and that distinct, almost retro-futuristic rounded cabin. It is a prime example of how different nations solve the same problems in completely different ways. Czechoslovakia has a rich history of mechanical engineering, and one of their most famous creations is the Praga V3S, a legendary military off-roader. But what happens when you need a truck for regular roads? You get the Praga S5T. The S stands for Silničný, which means road in Czech, and 5T stands for its 5-ton capacity. Launched in the late 1950s, the S5T was essentially the civilized brother of the military V3S. It took the rugged bones of a war machine and adapted them for hauling coal, milk, and groceries. The most distinctive feature of the S5T is its engine. It used an air-cooled Tatra diesel engine. Yes, air-cooled. This meant there was no radiator to leak, no water pump to fail, and no coolant to freeze in the harsh winters. The engine sound is unmistakable, a loud clattering roar that you can hear from miles away. While the military version had a flat face, the S5T featured a long, protruding nose to house the engine, giving it better aerodynamics and a unique, almost anteater-like profile that stands out on the road. Inside, the cabin was more comfortable than the military version, although comfortable is a relative term for a truck from the 60s. The S5T was lowered for better stability on asphalt and geared for higher speeds, reaching about 45 miles per hour. It was the workhorse of Czechoslovakia for decades. While it might look strange to modernize, the S5T was a triumph of practical engineering. It's rugged, loud, and undeniably charismatic. A truck that refuses to die and still has a cult following among classic vehicle enthusiasts today. When you think of American heavy trucks, names like Mack or Peterbilt usually come to mind. But true connoisseurs know the legend of Brockway. Founded in Cortland, New York, Brockway started as a carriage builder in the 1800s before moving into trucks. The Model 761 is a prime example of their philosophy: rugged luxury. Why is it on this list? Because of its mascot. Every Brockway truck proudly displays a husky dog on the radiator grille. They were marketed as the most rugged truck in the world, and the husky symbolized stamina and strength. The 761 series, popular in the 60s and 70s, wasn't mass-produced on a generic assembly line like a Ford. These were often custom-built to the buyer's exact specifications. They were famous for their heavy-duty construction, using real steel fenders instead of fiberglass or plastic. Power came from massive diesel engines, often Cummins or Caterpillar, allowing these trucks to haul massive loads of timber or construction materials. Driving a Brockway 761 was a physical experience. No power steering in the early days, just a raw mechanical connection between the driver and the road. Sadly, the company closed its doors in 1977, making these trucks rare collectibles today. The Brockway 761 represents a bygone era of American manufacturing where quality and customization were more important than volume. Seeing a husky on the road today is a special treat for truck lovers. It stands as a monument to the golden age of trucking, a time when trucks had distinct personalities and were built to outlive their owners. But if a massive American semi is too big for you, how about a truck that is technically a motorcycle? We are now entering the weird and tiny section of our list, and we start in Italy with the Machi MB1. You might know the name Machi from their famous World War II fighter planes or Airmachi motorcycles. After the war, Italy needed cheap, efficient transportation to rebuild the country, and Machi had a brilliant idea: combine a motorcycle with a truck. The MB1, introduced in the 1950s, is a three-wheeled diesel truck. Yes, 3 wheels. It looks like the front of a motorcycle was welded to the back of a cargo box. But don't let the size fool you. This was a serious machine. It featured a fully closed cabin for the driver, which was pure luxury compared to riding a scooter in the rain. It was powered by a robust 750cc diesel engine, providing enough torque to carry heavy loads of stone, wood, or produce. The design is incredibly utilitarian. The single front wheel allowed for a tight turning radius, perfect for navigating the narrow, ancient streets of Italian cities where a standard four-wheel truck would get stuck. The Machi MB1 represents a specific moment in history where efficiency was more important than speed or comfort. Top speed was barely 40 miles per hour, and the ride was bumpy, but it got the job done. It chugged along with that classic diesel thumping sound, helping to build modern Italy. It is strange, it can be unstable at high speeds if you aren't careful, but it is undeniably cool. But if you think three wheels are weird, wait until you see a truck made of canvas. This might be the most adorable truck ever made. Meet the Solito. Produced in France by New Map starting in the 1950s, this vehicle stretches the definition of the word truck. It was designed as a sans-permis vehicle, meaning it had an engine so small that you didn't even need a driver's license to operate it in France. The Solito is basically a sheet metal box on three tiny wheels, weighing only about 300 pounds. It is so small you could almost park it in your living room. But the